breathe in the cool, crisp air. Imagine stepping out onto a vast, unbroken expanse of pure white, where the horizon stretches infinitely in every direction, meeting a sky brushed with hues of pale violet and deep velvet blue. The silence here is not empty. It is a profound, comforting stillness, a quiet so pure it feels like a heavy, soft blanket wrapping around your shoulders. You're standing at the top of the world. The air is remarkably clear, devoid of the dust and clamour of the distant cities you have left far behind. Above you, a solitary star flickers into being, a tiny beacon of silver light reflecting off a landscape made entirely of frozen water and ancient stone. This is the Arctic, a realm of quiet miracles, where time slows down to the rhythmic breathing of the ocean beneath the ice, and the world itself seems to be resting in a state of suspended grace. As we journey through this landscape together, tracing the hidden wonders and gentle secrets of the North, you do not need to try to remember any of this. Let your mind soften, just as the snow drifts gently against the ice ridges. Allow the ideas and images to drift over you, like a cool, refreshing breeze on a warm afternoon. There is no test to pass, no information to cling to. What stays in your mind stays. What fades away simply makes room for deeper rest. You're safe here, floating on a current of calm, fascinating truths, allowing your thoughts to settle and your breathing to deepen. Let the stillness of the polar north guide you into an expansive, peaceful state of being, where curiosity meets tranquility and the mind is free to wander without destination. As we gaze across this tranquil expanse, the concept of a day begins to change. For months at a time, the sun does not set. It simply glides along the horizon, casting a perpetual golden hour over the ice. This is the phenomenon of the midnight sun, a celestial dance where the earth tips its northern crown directly toward the light. Imagine a late afternoon that lasts for weeks. Shadows stretch out long and blue, painting the snow with intricate shifting patterns, yet the dusk never truly arrives. The sky remains bathed in a soft peach-coloured glow, bleeding endlessly into shades of apricot and lavender. This continuous daylight transforms the Arctic into a world without urgency. Time is no longer measured by the ticking of a clock or the rising and setting of the sun, but by the slow, continuous arc of light. For the mind, this endless sunset is a profound release. It removes the pressure of the impending night, offering a limitless canvas of time where rushing becomes impossible, and simply existing within the golden light becomes the only natural state. Beneath this unending light, the seemingly barren tundra harbours a delicate secret. When the brief, brilliant Arctic summer arrives, the permafrost softens just enough to allow life to push through. Millions of tiny, pure white tufts begin to nod in the gentle breeze. This is the Arctic cotton grass, a resilient plant that carpets the marshy ground in what looks like a second snowfall. Each stem holds a head of silky, translucent bristles, designed to catch the wind and scatter seeds. But to the eye, it is a sea of softness, a vast field of downy feathers swaying in perfect unison. It is remarkable to think that in one of the harshest climates on Earth, nature produces something so profoundly soft and delicate. The cotton grass traps a tiny layer of still air around its seeds, creating a microclimate of warmth, a tiny greenhouse of its own making. It reminds us that even in the coldest, most remote corners of our world, there is an inherent gentleness, a quiet persistence of beauty that thrives not by fighting the elements, but by bending and swaying harmoniously with them. Where the tundra meets the sea, the ice gives way to dark, sapphire waters. Gliding silently beneath this frozen ceiling is a creature of immense grace and ancient wisdom, the bowhead whale. These gentle giants, with their dark, massive bodies and bright white chins, are the true guardians of the polar deep. They move with an unhurried, majestic slowness, perfectly adapted to the frigid waters. What makes the bowhead truly extraordinary is its relationship with time. They are the longest living mammals on Earth. Some bowhead whales swimming in the Arctic today were born before the Industrial Revolution, possessing a lifespan that can stretch well over 200 years. Imagine the quiet history they have witnessed, navigating the same deep, echoing canyons of ice century after century. They sing to one another across vast distances, their songs complex and resonant, changing slightly year by year like an oral history passed down through generations. To think of the bowhead is to expand our own sense of time, shrinking our daily worries against the backdrop of a life lived slowly, deeply, and harmoniously over centuries beneath the peaceful ice. The ice that floats above these ancient whales is not merely a frozen surface. It is a vital, active participant in the harmony of the entire planet. Spanning millions of square miles, the Arctic sea ice acts as the Earth's grand mirror. Because it is so brilliantly white, it reflects the vast majority of the sun's energy back into the quiet depths of space. This quiet, passive reflection, known as the albedo effect, is what keeps our entire world cool and balanced. There is no machinery here, no complex infrastructure, just water, crystallized by the cold into a pristine white shield that silently protects the globe. It is a stunning realization that the simple color and texture of this frozen ocean directly shapes the climate of distant tropical rainforests and temperate valleys. The ice does not labor, it simply exists in its bright reflective state, doing the profound work of cooling the planet by merely shining back at the sun. It is a beautiful metaphor for how quiet presence and simply reflecting light can have a monumental calming impact on the world around us. Navigating the narrow channels within this grand mirror of ice is one of the ocean's most enigmatic residents, a creature that seems to have swam straight out of a myth. The narwhal, often called the unicorn of the sea, possesses a single spiraling tusk that juts proudly from its head. For centuries, this ivory spear was thought to be a weapon or a tool for breaking ice. But the truth is far more delicate and fascinating. The narwhal's tusk is actually a tooth, but it is turned inside out. It is packed with millions of nerve endings, making it a highly sensitive sensory organ. As the narwhal glides through the dark, cold water, it uses its tusk to literally taste the ocean. It can feel subtle changes in temperature, pressure, and the salinity of the water, allowing it to read the environment with astonishing precision. It is a biological antenna, deeply connecting the creature to the invisible currents and chemistry of its icy home. This teaches us that what might appear as a tough, defensive exterior can sometimes be an instrument of incredible sensitivity, a tool not for battle, but for profound, intimate understanding of the surrounding world. Above the water, the Arctic air sometimes holds a magic entirely its own. On the clearest, coldest days, when the skies are sharp, crystalline blue, the air itself begins to sparkle. This is not snow falling from a cloud, but a meteorological phenomenon known as diamond dust. In the intense, still cold, water vapor freezes directly out of the clear air, forming microscopic, perfectly hexagonal ice crystals. These tiny prisms float suspended in the lower atmosphere, catching the low-angled sunlight and refracting it into thousands of tiny glittering rainbows. It is as if the air has suddenly materialized into a fine, shimmering mist of crushed gemstones. Walking through diamond dust is a deeply surreal and calming experience. There is no wind, no sound, only the gentle, slow-motion descent of glittering light all around you. It reminds the mind that magic is simply nature operating under specific quiet conditions. The invisible moisture we breathe can, with a drop in temperature and a stillness in the air, transform the empty space into a breathtaking display of floating, sparkling wonder. Moving lightly through this sparkling air is a creature perfectly woven into the fabric of the frost, the Arctic fox. Small, elegant, and impossibly quiet, the fox survives the extreme winter not by escaping it, but by embracing it completely. It possesses the warmest pelt of any animal found in the Arctic, a dense, multi-layered coat that insulates it so perfectly that it does not even begin to shiver until the temperature drops far below freezing. But its true mastery lies in its ability to transform. As the landscape shifts from the browns and greens of summer to the blinding white of winter, the fox sheds its dark fur, growing a new coat as pure and white as the snowdrifts it walks upon. It becomes a ghost, a seamless extension of the terrain. The fox wraps its thick, bushy tail around its face like a built-in scarf when it sleeps, creating a perfectly warm, self-contained sphere of comfort. It is a masterpiece of adaptation, showing us that true resilience comes not from resisting the cold, but from adapting to it so perfectly that you become one with the environment, finding warmth and safety from within. Far from the wandering fox, deep within a mountain on the remote archipelago of Svalbard, wrapped in permafrost and silence, lies a testament to human hope and preservation. This is the Global Seed Vault, a secure facility carved into the solid rock, designed to safeguard the botanical diversity of our planet. It is a quiet fortress, standing undisturbed amid the swirling snows, holding within its freezing chambers millions of seeds from every corner of the earth. From ancient grains grown in sun-drenched valleys to rare vegetables cultivated in tropical soils, they're all resting here, sleeping in the dark, cold embrace of the Arctic mountain. The permafrost acts as a natural fail-safe freezer, ensuring that even if the power were to fail, the seeds would remain frozen and viable for centuries. There is a profound peace in knowing this place exists. It is a library of life, a quiet backup plan for the globe, resting far away from the noise and conflict of the world. It is a comforting thought, a physical manifestation of long-term care and foresight, nestled safely in the unchanging cold. The ice of the Arctic is not just a protector of seeds, it is an archivist, a keeper of time itself. If you were to travel to the centre of the Greenland ice sheet, you would find ice that is over 100,000 years old. As snow falls year after year, century after century, it compresses the layers beneath it into solid, crystalline ice. But it does not freeze perfectly clear. Trapped within this dense blue ice are millions of tiny microscopic air bubbles. Each one is a pristine sample of the Earth's atmosphere from the exact moment that snow fell. Some bubbles hold the air that prehistoric animals breathed, others hold the atmosphere from the last ice age. Climatologists study these tiny frozen pockets to understand the history of our world's climate, reading the ice like a towering vertical book. It is deeply humbling to think that the ice is breathing out the ancient past. The air from millennia ago is perfectly preserved, locked in a state of suspended animation, waiting quietly in the deep freeze to tell the story of the Earth to anyone willing to look closely enough. As the long Arctic day finally yields to the deep polar night, the sky prepares its most magnificent display. The aurora borealis, or northern lights, begin to ripple across the darkness. We often imagine them as glowing clouds close enough to touch, but the reality is far more expansive and awe-inspiring. These sweeping ribbons of emerald green, vivid magenta, and pale violet are not happening in the air we breathe. They are blooming at the very edge of space, anywhere from 50 to over 400 miles above the Earth's surface. They are born when solar winds, charged particles singing across the vacuum of space from the sun, collide with the protective magnetic field of our planet. The resulting glow is a cosmic reaction, a massive silent symphony of light painting the thermosphere. To stand on the ice and look up at the aurora is to witness the Earth actively shielding itself, turning solar energy into art. It pulls our perspective upward, past the clouds, past the atmosphere, into the silent sweeping currents of the cosmos. It reminds us that we are resting on a small protected world, moving gracefully through a vast and beautifully complex universe. As that celestial light of the aurora finally softens into the deep, velvet indigo of the polar night, the atmosphere closer to the ice reveals another invisible, almost magical wonder. Here, the frozen air itself plays a gentle trick with the nature of sound. In most parts of the temperate world, the air grows steadily colder the higher you travel into the sky. But in the depths of the Arctic winter, the immense icy surface cools the air immediately above it so drastically that a slightly warmer, denser layer of air ends up resting gently on top. This atmospheric blanket is known as a temperature inversion. Because sound waves travel just a fraction faster in warm air and slower in the cold, this invisible ceiling bends sound waves backward, pushing them down toward the frozen, frictionless ground. A normal conversation, the low, distant shifting of a glacier, or the rhythmic, crisp crunch of boots on the snow can carry with perfect clarity for miles across the unbroken expanse. It is as if the entire landscape has been transformed into an immense, invisible, whispering gallery. Distance completely loses its meaning in this environment. The vastness does not swallow sound to leave you isolated. Rather, it cradles it, carrying tiny, clear echoes across the miles, quietly reminding us that even in the most expansive, seemingly empty isolation, there is a continuous, invisible thread of connection travelling across the frost. Yet, when the heavy clouds gather and the snow finally begins to fall, this sprawling, whispering gallery transforms into a sanctuary of profound, absolute silence. Imagine millions of intricate, perfectly geometric ice crystals drifting down from a pale, heavy sky, entirely devoid of wind. As this fresh, dry snow accumulates on the tundra, it does not pack tightly together. It rests gently upon itself, creating a deeply porous, airy layer that is composed mostly of empty space. This delicate structure acts as a perfect, natural acoustic dampening foam, unparalleled by anything human hands could engineer. It effortlessly absorbs the ambient noise of the restless wind, the subtle groans of the shifting ice, and the echoing expanse of the landscape. The world is instantly muted, wrapped in a thick sensory blanket that softens every sharp edge and quiets every frequency. As you listen to the steady rhythm of this narration, notice how your own breathing might be slowing down, naturally syncing with this imagined, hushed world. Your mind, too, can absorb this quiet, allowing the mental noise and clutter of the day to simply vanish into the soft white drifts. There is a deep, comforting safety in this muffled environment, offering a space where the ears can finally rest and the heavy mind can sink into a state of total, peaceful stillness. When the unending twilight of the long winter finally yields to the returning warmth of the sun, this landscape of muffled white slowly begins to change, revealing sudden, vivid splashes of colour. High atop the massive, ancient glaciers that carve through the valleys, shallow, gentle depressions begin to collect the very first trickles of summer meltwater. As the sun warms the surface, these tiny puddles expand, eventually merging to form sprawling supraglacial lakes. These are not ordinary bodies of water, because they rest entirely on a bed of pure, densely compacted glacial ice, and contain absolutely no soil, algae, or sediment. The water takes on a shockingly brilliant, luminous sapphire blue. It is a colour so intense and flawlessly pure, it looks as though pieces of the summer sky have physically fallen and melted onto the ancient ice. These temporary dazzling pools are mirror-like, perfectly reflecting the passing wispy clouds and the towering white ice cliffs that surround them. They exist only for a brief magical window of time before draining away through deep, hidden fissures in the glacier, a fleeting masterpiece of light and pristine water. They teach us that even in the most frozen, seemingly rigid environments, a slight shift in temperature can allow warmth to suddenly bloom into pools of breathtaking, unexpected beauty. Reflected in these fleeting sapphire mirrors, you might occasionally catch the swift, elegant silhouette of a small bird passing overhead, completely unbothered by the vastness below. This is the Arctic tern, a creature of delicate pearl grey and stark white feathers, adorned with a bright crimson beak. Though it weighs mere ounces, light enough to rest on a single twig, it is the undisputed champion of global travel. Every single year, as the brief Arctic summer begins to wane, this little bird takes flight, leaving the high north to journey all the way to the frozen coast of Antarctica, only to turn around and fly back again the following spring. It is a staggering, unbroken journey of over 40,000 miles annually. Because it spends its summers at the top of the world and its winters at the bottom, the Arctic tern experiences more golden daylight than any other living creature on the face of the planet. It is a life lived in a perpetual chasing embrace of the sun. To think of this tiny, fragile bird navigating over vast, seemingly endless oceans by reading the stars and feeling the Earth's magnetic fields is to feel a sense of boundless, airy freedom. It quietly shows us that true endurance is not about possessing heavy strength or massive size, but about an unwavering internal rhythm and an absolute lightness of being. As the tern flies low over the mainland tundra, leaving the coastal glaciers behind, it passes over a landscape that is far from flat or uniform. Dotting the low, marshy green and brown plains are strange conical hills that look like miniature slumbering volcanoes blanketed in soft vegetation. These striking formations are called pingos, and they are a uniquely polar phenomenon. They are not made of tectonic rock or upwelling lava, but of solid, expanding ice. Deep beneath the surface of the Earth, a hidden core of subterranean water slowly freezes over time. Because water expands with incredible force as it turns to solid ice, this massive underground lens pushes forcefully upward, slowly, patiently lifting the layers of soil and permafrost right along with it. Year by passing year, century by century, the hill grows a fraction taller, an earthen shell hiding a heart of pure ancient frost. Some of the largest pingos have been quietly growing for thousands of years, reaching impressive heights of over 150 feet. As you envision these slow, rising hills, allow any remaining tension in your own shoulders to gently release. Just as the Earth shifts and settles without any sense of rush or urgency, your body can let go of the day's pressure, settling heavier into the surface beneath you. There is absolutely no need to hurry here. Even the Earth itself is perfectly content to grow at a pace measured in millennia. Beneath this slowly shifting ice-cored Earth, the high Arctic holds incredible silent memories that stretch back far beyond human history, preserving a world completely unrecognizable from the frozen plains we see today. On the remote, wind-scoured terrain of Axel Heiberg Island, located deep in the Canadian high Arctic, there are ancient weathered stumps protruding directly from the frozen ground. But these are not petrified logs that have slowly turned to stone over time. They are the actual original wood of dawn redwood and swamp cypress trees that flourished here over 45 million years ago. Back in that distant epoch, the Arctic was a warm, incredibly lush rainforest, teeming with prehistoric life and thick canopies. When the global climate dramatically shifted and the deep permanent cold arrived, these towering forests were not destroyed or turned to fossils. They were flash frozen and naturally mummified in the ice. If you were to gently run your hand over one of these ancient stumps, you could still feel the grain of the wood and perhaps even catch the incredibly faint, resinous scent of sap from a tree that drank the sunlight millions of years before the first humans walked the earth. It is a mind-bending shift in perspective, a quiet reminder that the Earth is a vast, ever-changing canvas, and that what appears entirely barren today is simply keeping the rich, vibrant secrets of the deep past perfectly safe and preserved. Clinging tightly to the dark, exposed rocks near these ancient mummified stumps is another fascinating form of life that completely redefines our human understanding of time and patience. Splashes of vibrant, almost fluorescent yellow-green decorate the basalt boulders, looking exactly like bright paint splattered across the stone. This is the map lichen, named because its complex, interconnected, expanding borders resemble the coastlines and rivers of a tiny, intricate atlas drawn directly onto the rock. In the incredibly harsh, nutrient-poor environment of the high polar desert, this resilient lichen grows at an almost impossibly slow rate, sometimes expanding outward by less than half a single millimetre in an entire year. Because its growth is so remarkably steady and uninterrupted by the extreme cold, scientists actually use these neon green patches as biological clocks to date how long the rocks themselves have been exposed to the air. Some of the larger circular colonies found resting peacefully on these stones have been growing continuously for over 8,000 years. They were already considered ancient when the first pyramids were being constructed, quietly surviving endless cycles of freezing dark and brilliant sun. It is a profound meditation on pure patience. The lichen does not struggle or rush. It simply holds on, finding exactly what it needs in the bare stone and the freezing air, slowly drawing its bright, beautiful map across the centuries. This absolute mastery of slow, deliberate existence extends far beyond the sunlit rocks, plunging deep into the inky, crushing depths of the freezing Arctic Ocean. Gliding smoothly through the heavy, dark water is a creature that moves as if swimming through thick syrup, the magnificent Greenland shark. With a massive slate-grey body and small luminescent eyes, adapted to the absolute dark, this deep-sea wanderer has the slowest recorded swimming speed and the most sluggish metabolism of any shark species in the world. It is perfectly, seamlessly tuned to the extreme, numbing cold of its environment, but its true marvel is its almost incomprehensible lifespan. By carefully examining the complex proteins in the lenses of their eyes, marine biologists have discovered that these majestic sharks can live for roughly 400 years and perhaps even upwards of 500. A Greenland shark swimming slowly through the dark, quiet waters today might have been born in the early 1600s. They navigate their lives so slowly that they do not even reach maturity until they are well over a century old. As you drift along with the steady current of these words, let the image of the Greenland shark be a deeply comforting anchor. Feel the total permission to slow your own mind down completely. There is a deep, abiding peace in knowing that somewhere in the dark, quiet ocean, a massive creature is moving with absolute unhurried grace, living a life totally insulated from the frantic pace of the world above. Where this deep, ancient ocean eventually meets the newly forming winter ice on the surface, a delicate, almost magical transformation occurs overnight. When the air temperature drops dramatically, falling far below the temperature of the freezing seawater beneath, the thin, freshly formed layer of sea ice begins to bloom in the dark. Moisture from the slightly warmer ice sublimates directly into the freezing still air and instantly crystallizes. As it does, it acts like a microscopic sponge, pulling tiny amounts of super salty brine up from the seawater beneath it. The result is a sprawling, breathtaking meadow of what scientists call frost flowers, intricate, incredibly feathery structures of ice that look exactly like fields of sparkling white ferns or fragile crystal lotuses resting silently on the dark, frozen sea. They're impossibly delicate, existing only in absolute windless stillness. A single, strong gust of Arctic wind would shatter the entire sparkling meadow into a fine mist. But in the quiet, gripping cold, they grow rapidly, absorbing the sea salt and acting as tiny, shimmering ecosystems for microscopic marine life. They are a breathtaking example of nature's ability to create ornate, highly fragile beauty out of the harshest, most freezing conditions imaginable, gently reminding us that deep vulnerability and incredibly delicate structures can thrive beautifully in the most unexpected places. This beautifully ever-shifting canvas of delicate frost flowers, ancient glacial ice, and silent stone is ultimately drawn together by an invisible, powerful force that quietly governs the entire globe. Deep beneath the crust of the earth, thousands of miles below the sleeping tundra, a massive, swirling ocean of liquid iron is constantly in motion, driven by the planet's rotation and intense core heat. This deep, molten, churning storm generates the Earth's vast magnetic field, the very shield that catches the solar winds and paints the auroras in the night sky. But because this subterranean iron ocean is incredibly fluid and always moving, the North Magnetic Pole is not a fixed, stable, permanent point on a map. It is a tireless wanderer. Every single day, the magnetic pole actually drifts. Over the last few decades, it has been moving steadily across the Canadian Arctic, sliding seamlessly beneath the ice and the ocean at a pace of about 30 miles a year, heading ever so slowly toward the coast of Siberia. Our compass needles do not point to a permanent, unyielding, rigid destination. They point to a highly dynamic, fluid centre of energy that is always slowly moving and adjusting itself. It is a beautiful, comforting realization that even the most fundamental compass of our world is not stubbornly locked in place. It wanders, it adjusts, and it flows, offering a soft, settling thought for a resting mind. That drifting, adapting, and moving are completely natural states of being, and that the centre of our world is always gently shifting beneath the silent, frozen stars, inviting us to simply drift along with it. Following the invisible, drifting pull of the planet's magnetic centre, we look up into the twilight sky, far beyond the altitude of normal weather. Here, in the incredibly thin, intensely cold air of the stratosphere, nature paints with an entirely different, ethereal palette. These are the nacreous clouds, sometimes known as mother-of-pearl clouds. They form at altitudes of over 50,000 feet, high enough to catch the rays of the sun long after it is set for the world below. Because they are made of perfectly uniform microscopic ice crystals, they diffract the hidden sunlight, glowing with vibrant, iridescent pastel shades of pink, violet, and pale green against the darkening sky. They look like delicate strokes of luminous oil paint spread across the heavens, shimmering with a soft, pearlescent sheen. To see them is to be reminded that beauty often requires a specific distance and a change in altitude. What seems dark and ordinary on the ground can, when elevated to the quiet stillness of the upper atmosphere, catch the light in ways we never imagined. It is a peaceful realization that light is always present, simply waiting for the right conditions to reflect back to us, shining brightly even after the sun has slipped quietly away. As that iridescent light slowly fades into the deep indigo of night, our gaze gently lowers back to the surface of the vast, shifting Arctic Ocean. When the bitterly cold winter air sweeps out over the relatively warmer open waters of the sea, a breathtaking, ghostly phenomenon occurs. This is known as Arctic sea smoke. As the warmer moisture from the dark water meets the freezing air above, it instantly condenses into a thick, swirling mist. It looks as though the ocean itself is quietly breathing out, exhaling massive, slow-rolling clouds of white steam that glide and curl over the dark, rhythmic waves. It is a beautiful, ethereal dance of temperatures, a soft collision of two distinct worlds, the heavy, freezing sky and the deep, fluid ocean. Watching this sea smoke rise and drift is deeply mesmerizing, like watching the slow curling of incense in a perfectly quiet room. As you imagine this gentle, rising mist, you might notice your own body feeling heavier, sinking comfortably into the surface beneath you. Your breath naturally matches the slow, steady exhalations of the ocean, a soft, continuous rhythm that smooths out any remaining tension, allowing the mind to drift like fog over calm waters. Shifting away from the misty shores and inland toward the snow-draped tundra, we find a master of soft, silent movement. This is the rock ptarmigan, a gentle, plump bird that refuses to leave the Arctic when the cold descends. Instead, it perfectly adapts its very body to the frozen terrain. As winter approaches, the ptarmigan molts its brown summer feathers, and grows a plumage of blinding, pure white. But its most remarkable adaptation happens on its feet. To navigate the deep, powdery snow without sinking, the ptarmigan grows thick, dense layers of soft, comb-like feathers directly on its toes. These feathery slippers act as miniature, natural snowshoes, spreading the bird's tiny weight over a larger surface area. It can walk lightly and silently across the freshest, most delicate snowdrifts, leaving barely a trace behind. It is an exquisite lesson in treading lightly upon the earth. The ptarmigan does not fight the heavy snow. It simply broadens its foundation, softening its approach to the world. It reminds us that moving through difficult terrain does not always require force or struggle. Sometimes, it only requires a softening of our steps, allowing us to glide peacefully over whatever challenges lie softly beneath us. Hidden deep beneath the snow that the ptarmigan so lightly walks upon, there is a tiny, astonishing story of patience playing out in absolute silence. Nestled under the frozen earth is the Arctic woolly bear moth in its caterpillar stage. Because the high Arctic summer is so incredibly brief, providing only a few weeks of warmth and sparse vegetation, this little creature cannot eat enough to grow and metamorphose in a single year. Instead, when the deep freeze returns, the caterpillar simply stops. It completely freezes solid, suspending all biological activity, entering a state of absolute icy dormancy. It remains in this frozen slumber for the entire winter, thawing out the following summer to eat for just a few days before freezing solid once again. It repeats this slow, patient cycle for up to 14 years. 14 winters of absolute stillness, just to gather the energy required to spin a cocoon and finally emerge as a delicate moth. It is perhaps the most profound example of patience on the planet. Nothing in this tiny life is rushed. It completely yields to the rhythm of the seasons, resting in total stasis when necessary, quietly teaching us that taking a long, deep pause is not a failure of progress, but a vital, necessary part of ultimate transformation. Above the frozen slumber of the caterpillar, wandering the icy valleys with a calm, deliberate gait, is a creature whose entire form has been sculpted by the cold. The Svalbard reindeer is unique among all its global cousins. Cut off from the rest of the world on a remote archipelago, it has evolved over thousands of years to perfectly match its environment. It has unusually short, sturdy legs, a rounded, compact body, and tiny, rounded ears. These are not just aesthetic changes, they are brilliant thermal architecture. By minimizing its surface area, the reindeer dramatically reduces the amount of heat it loses to the bitter wind. In the depths of winter, it grows a coat of fur so incredibly thick and insulating that snow can fall and settle directly on the animal's back without melting, because absolutely zero body heat escapes through the pelt. The reindeer carries its own perfect, unwavering microclimate wherever it goes. It is a walking sanctuary of warmth. As you picture this calm, insulated creature standing peacefully in a snowstorm, let your own mind feel similarly protected. You're safe within your own space, insulated from the noise and demands of the waking world. Your thoughts can remain warm and quiet, safely contained within the slow, steady rhythm of your breathing. While the reindeer finds warmth in its heavy coat, the vast expanse of the frozen ocean hides its own surprising sanctuaries of warmth and life. When looking down from high above the sea ice, you might suddenly notice massive, dark pools of deep, open water, completely surrounded by miles of thick, impenetrable ice. These are called polynyas. They are naturally occurring, open water oases in the frozen desert. Kept open by complex, upwelling ocean currents or persistent sweeping winds, these breathing holes refuse to freeze, even in the absolute dead of winter. They become incredibly vital havens for marine life, drawing in seals, walruses and whales who rise to the surface to breathe, and thousands of seabirds that plunge into the dark, nutrient-rich waters. A polynya is a beautiful anomaly, a pocket of movement and life amidst total stillness. It is a reminder that even in the most rigid, frozen circumstances, the constant, invisible currents of the world always find a way to break through and sustain life. They teach us that isolation is never absolute. Even in the deepest cold, there are always hidden spaces of warmth and vitality, quiet oases waiting patiently to offer respite to those who seek them out. This profound sense of hidden wonder extends far beyond the surface of the ocean, stretching deep into the solid heart of the landmass itself. Covered completely by the massive 2-mile-thick Greenland ice sheet lies a geographical secret of staggering proportions. Buried beneath the crushing weight of the ancient ice is a colossal, winding valley known as the Greenland Grand Canyon. It is over 460 miles long, making it longer than the Grand Canyon in North America, and in some places it plunges half a mile deep. This immense, majestic canyon was completely unknown to humanity until radar waves, piercing the ice from above, finally mapped its contours. For millions of years, this monumental valley has existed in absolute, total darkness, silently cradling the weight of the glaciers above it. It is awe-inspiring to consider that one of the largest, most dramatic geological features on the entire planet exists without ever being touched by sunlight or seen by human eyes. It rests in a state of permanent, majestic secrecy. It quietly reassures the mind that we do not need to see everything for it to be beautiful. There are vast, deep, monumental wonders simply existing in the dark, perfectly content in their own unseen grandeur. Though the canyon is buried in silence, the ice above is entirely capable of song. When the dark, open water of an Arctic lake finally begins to freeze in the early winter, the newly formed, expansive sheet of black ice becomes a vast acoustic membrane. As the temperature drops, the ice expands and contracts, causing deep, microscopic fractures within the frozen sheet. These tiny, sudden shifts release acoustic energy, but because high frequencies and low frequencies travel through the solid ice at distinctly different speeds, the sound reaches the shore as a mesmerizing, sweeping tone. It sounds like a synthetic laser beam or a high-pitched, echoing cello string being softly plucked across the silence. This phenomenon is known as acoustic dispersion, but to anyone standing in the quiet dark, it is simply the sound of the ice singing. It is a futuristic, musical chime echoing beautifully across a prehistoric landscape. The lake is tuning itself to the temperature, vibrating like a massive crystal instrument. To hear the ice sing is to realize that the natural world is never truly inanimate. It responds, it shifts, and it expresses itself in an intricate, resonant language of its own, turning the simple act of freezing into a symphony of slow, echoing chimes. As the ice sings its high, clear notes on the frozen lakes, a completely different, much softer approach to the cold is happening down in the ocean waters. The walrus, a massive whiskered giant of the Arctic Sea, has developed an incredibly clever, effortless way to find rest. Walruses love to sleep, and they can comfortably do so on the floating sea ice or rocky shores, but they also have the astonishing ability to sleep deeply while entirely submerged in the freezing open water. To do this, they rely on two large elastic pouches located right in their throats, known as pharyngeal pouches. When a walrus wants to sleep in the sea, it simply swims to the surface, fills these pouches with a large gulp of air, and seals them shut. The pouches act exactly like built-in life jackets, keeping the massive animal's head perfectly buoyed above the water, allowing it to bob gently up and down like a cork. The walrus can then completely relax its entire body, letting go of all muscular effort, falling into a deep, peaceful slumber while cradled by the rolling ocean waves. It is the ultimate expression of trust and relaxation. As you imagine the gentle, rhythmic bobbing of the resting walrus, let that same effortless buoyancy fill your own chest. You do not need to hold yourself up. You can simply inflate your lungs, exhale slowly, and let the quiet current of the night carry you, perfectly supported and deeply at rest. Our journey brings us back, finally, to the immense towering face of an ancient glacier, where the true deep colour of the Arctic is revealed. When we think of snow and ice, we naturally picture a blinding, opaque white. But the ice that makes up the heart of a glacier is entirely different. As snow falls year after year, century after century, the sheer, unimaginable weight of the new snow continuously presses down on the layers below. This relentless, gentle, incredibly slow pressure gradually squeezes out every single tiny pocket of air. Over thousands of years, the white, airy snow is compressed into an incredibly dense, solid mass of crystalline structure. When this happens, the ice absorbs all the red and yellow light from the sun, allowing only the purest, deepest spectrum of blue to escape and reflect back to our eyes. This is glacial blue ice. It is a colour that seems to emit its own internal calming glow, a rich, profound sapphire that speaks of unimaginable pressure, perfect clarity, and vast, deep time. It is a stunning visual metaphor for the mind. Under the gentle, persistent pressure of rest, all the scattered, airy thoughts are slowly squeezed out, leaving behind only a pure, dense, beautifully clear state of peaceful focus. As we gaze into the glowing, deep blue heart of the ice, we are looking at time itself, purified and perfectly preserved, waiting quietly to guide us further into the gentle depths of the polar night. As we follow the vast, glowing expanse of this deep blue ice, the sheer scale of the glacier suddenly yields to a tiny, surprising detail resting on its surface. Scattered across the cold, ancient blue are perfectly round, vibrant green spheres. These are affectionately known to glaciologists as glacier mice, though they are not animals at all. They are independent, unattached balls of soft moss that form completely naturally on the surface of the ice. What makes them truly wondrous is their slow, mysterious journey. Driven by the subtle melting of the ice beneath them and the gentle nudge of the polar winds, an entire herd of these velvety green spheres will move slowly across the glacier. Astonishingly, they move in absolute unison. The entire colony rolls at the same speed and in the exact same direction, travelling perhaps an inch a day, rotating so that every side of the moss receives equal sunlight. It is a miniature, slow-motion migration happening on the back of a frozen river. Watching them in the mind's eye brings a sense of whimsical peace. It reveals that even on the most barren, imposing landscapes of pure ice, tiny communities of life are quietly cooperating, moving together with unhurried purpose, gently rolling through the days. From these tiny rolling spheres of green, we shift our gaze to the delicate air hovering just above the summer tundra, where another small master of warmth navigates the cool breeze. The Arctic bumblebee, adorned with a thick, shaggy coat of amber and black fuzz, is a marvel of biological engineering. In an environment where cold snaps can arrive at a moment's notice, this large, gentle insect cannot rely on the sun alone for warmth. Instead, it possesses the remarkable ability to detach its flight muscles from its wings. By rapidly vibrating these muscles without moving its wings, the bee effectively shivers, generating its own internal furnace. It can raise its body temperature dramatically higher than the surrounding freezing air, keeping itself perfectly cozy. It is a flying ember, a tiny self-contained pocket of warmth buzzing from one pale Arctic poppy to another. The image of this heavy, soft bee navigating the vastness is a beautiful reminder that warmth is not always something we must seek from the outside world. Sometimes, the capacity to generate deep, sustaining heat is already held within, waiting only to be activated by a quiet internal rhythm. While the bee vibrates to stay warm above ground, deep beneath the surface, an astonishing surrender to the cold is taking place. The Arctic ground squirrel takes winter hibernation to an absolute, seemingly impossible extreme. As it curls into a tight, furry ball in its burrow, it does not simply sleep. It allows its core body temperature to drop below the freezing point of water. It enters a state of supercooling, where its blood flows at temperatures that would freeze any other mammal solid, yet its fluids remain entirely liquid, protected by specialized proteins that prevent ice crystals from forming in its veins. Its heart slows to just 1 or 2 beats a minute, a single, slow pulse, followed by a long, profound silence. As you consider this deep, suspended state, notice how your own heartbeat feels steady and calm. Your body is growing heavier, sinking comfortably into the mattress, finding its own perfect, restful rhythm. You do not need to hold tightly to the day. You can simply let your temperature settle, your muscles soften, and your mind drift into this same deep, protected quiet. The squirrel shows us the ultimate form of letting go, yielding completely to the season, trusting that the earth will hold it safely until the spring light returns. Above the sleeping earth, the icy crust meets the dark, open water of the coastal seas, where a pale, ghostly silhouette moves with an elegance completely unique to the Arctic. The beluga whale, completely white to camouflage perfectly against the sea ice, navigates the submerged crystalline corridors. Unlike any other whale on the planet, the beluga possesses unfused vertebrae in its neck. This subtle anatomical difference grants it an extraordinary gift. It can turn its head, nod, and look around its environment just as we do. It moves through the water with a gentle, inquisitive grace, turning to look up at the textured underside of the floating ice, or angling its head to observe a passing school of silver fish. This flexibility gives the beluga a profoundly expressive, almost human-like presence in the water. They are highly social, conversational creatures, chirping and singing through the dark, their soft, bulbous foreheads shifting as they echolocate. The beluga's slow, deliberate turning of its head beneath the frozen ceiling is a lesson in gentle awareness. It reminds us that navigating cold or rigid spaces does not require stiffness. Remaining flexible, curious, and soft in our movements allows us to glide gracefully through any environment. Sinking down from the swimming beluga, descending miles through the freezing pitch-black waters, we reach the very bottom of the Arctic Ocean. Here, hidden in absolute crushing darkness, lies a monumental geographical secret. The Gackle Ridge is a massive underwater mountain range that quietly divides the ocean floor. It is the slowest spreading mid-ocean ridge on the entire planet. While other tectonic plates around the globe grind and separate with restless, noticeable energy, the Gackle Ridge pulls apart at an incredibly sluggish, almost imperceptible pace, less than ½ an inch per year. Because it moves so slowly, it does not create towering, dramatic volcanoes. Instead, the Earth's mantle simply, quietly stretches, exposing ancient deep earth rocks directly to the freezing ocean water. This slow, steady parting creates a landscape of deep, quiet valleys and smooth, slumbering, abyssal hills. It is a place of profound geological peace. To imagine this immense hidden mountain range moving at the speed of a growing fingernail is to understand the true scale of planetary patience. Deep beneath the surface of our awareness, monumental shifts are always occurring, but they are happening so gently, so slowly, that they create no disturbance at all, only a quiet, steady expansion in the dark. Rising from the deep, dark ocean floor back into the sprawling open skies of the high Arctic, the atmosphere itself occasionally puts on a display of breathtaking silent geometry. On days when the air is remarkably still and bitterly cold, the sky fills with millions of microscopic, flat hexagonal ice crystals. As these tiny, six-sided prisms float gently toward the Earth, they align themselves parallel to the ground, acting as millions of miniature mirrors suspended in the air. When the low golden sun shines through this invisible floating glass, it bends the light perfectly to create what are known as sundogs, or parhelia. Suddenly, the sun is no longer alone in the sky. It is flanked on either side by two bright glowing companion suns, often connected by a massive luminous halo of pale rainbow light. It is an optical illusion of staggering beauty, turning a simple, bright day into a celestial painting. Seeing 3 suns resting on the frozen horizon expands our sense of wonder, revealing how the simplest elements, cold air and water, can playfully refract our reality. It gently suggests that our perspective can always be expanded, and that light, when passing through stillness, will always multiply into something more beautiful. Wandering beneath this haloed sky is a creature that seems to have stepped directly out of the last ice age. The muskox, with its massive curving horns and incredibly long sweeping dark hair that nearly touches the snow, looks like a formidable heavy beast. Yet beneath this rugged, imposing exterior lies the softest secret in the animal kingdom. Hidden close to its skin is an undercoat called kiviot. This incredibly fine wool is grown every winter and shed in the spring. It is 8 times warmer than sheep's wool and significantly softer than the finest cashmere. Despite the muskox's heavy, ancient appearance, it is wrapped in an underlayer of pure, weightless cloud. This astonishing insulation traps heat so effectively that the animal can stand completely still in a raging blizzard, perfectly content and deeply warm. As you picture this ancient wanderer standing peacefully in the snow, let your own mind feel that same dual nature. You can be strong and resilient on the outside while maintaining a core that is incredibly soft, protected, and warm. Allow your breathing to become as light and gentle as that spun wool, recognizing that true strength often comes from preserving an inner sanctuary of total weightless comfort. For those who navigate this sprawling white landscape, the sky above serves as a massive natural map, reflecting the secrets of the surface below. Because the Arctic is a mosaic of bright white ice and deep dark ocean water, the low-hanging flat clouds act as a colossal mirror. When open, dark water lies just over the horizon. Out of sight, the clouds above it will take on a heavy, dark grey appearance, a phenomenon explorers call water sky. Conversely, when solid, brilliant white sea ice lies ahead, the clouds will catch that intense reflection, glowing with a bright, luminous white sheen known as ice blink. For centuries, indigenous navigators and early explorers used this gentle sky mirror to find their way through treacherous, shifting waters without ever needing a compass. They simply looked up to read what was hidden ahead. It is a profoundly comforting way to navigate the world. The environment is not keeping secrets. It is softly projecting the path forward onto the canvas of the sky. It reminds the resting mind that we do not always need to push forward blindly to see what lies ahead. Often, if we simply pause and look at the subtle reflections around us, the gentle signs will naturally guide us safely on our way. While the ice blink reveals the frozen plains, there are hidden pockets of the Arctic where the Earth openly offers a miraculous, unexpected embrace. On an uninhabited island off the southern coast of Greenland, surrounded by sharp peaks and waters choked with colossal drifting icebergs, lie the geothermal springs of Unatok. Unlike volcanic springs that bubble with sulfur and steam, these waters are heated deep underground by the natural friction of the Earth's crust, emerging completely pure, crystal clear, and wonderfully hot. Imagine slipping into a perfectly heated natural stone pool. The air around your face is crisp and biting, carrying the faint, fresh scent of glacial ice, while your body is completely submerged in deep, soothing, radiating warmth. You can rest your head against the smooth stones and watch massive ancient icebergs drift silently past the island, glowing blue in the fading light. This dramatic, impossible contrast, the deep internal fire of the earth meeting the ancient frozen ice of the sea, creates a sanctuary of absolute relaxation. It is a reminder that perfectly safe, incredibly warm havens can exist in the most extreme environments, offering a quiet, soothing place to rest while the cold world simply floats slowly by. As you soak in the imagined warmth of that quiet geothermal pool, The Arctic night deepens, and the cold air prepares one final breathtaking illusion. On the calmest, most frigid winter nights, when tiny flat ice crystals are suspended in the air near the ground, any source of light on the surface behaves in an extraordinary way. The light from a distant research station, a small coastal village, or even the glowing reflection of the moon on the ice hits these millions of floating mirrors. Instead of scattering outward, the light is reflected perfectly vertically. The result is a forest of light pillars, towering luminous columns that shoot straight up from the ground into the dark, starry heavens. They look like glowing, ethereal trees made of pure coloured light, holding up the canopy of the night sky. The landscape becomes a silent, towering cathedral of beams, completely stationary and perfectly quiet. It is a gentle, awe-inspiring illusion that connects the heavy, frozen earth directly to the vastness of space. These pillars of light act as beautiful, glowing tethers, softly holding the quiet landscape in place and preparing the mind to wander even further into the luminous, peaceful mysteries that continue to unfold across the endless ice. Just as those luminous, ethereal pillars of light reach upward into the starry expanse of the night sky, the freezing ocean beneath the ice is quietly building its own incredible, slow-motion pillars reaching downward into the dark. When the surface of the seawater freezes, it forms a pure, solid crust of fresh ice, actively pushing the heavy salt out of its crystalline structure. This expelled salt creates pockets of supersaline, incredibly cold brine. Because this brine is denser and much heavier than the surrounding ocean water, it slowly begins to sink. As it descends in a steady, concentrated stream, it is so profoundly cold that it instantly freezes the regular seawater it touches, creating a delicate, hollow tube of ice that grows downward from the frozen ceiling. This is known as a brinnacle, or an ice stalactite. Growing in absolute, undisturbed silence, a brinnacle can take hours to reach the ocean floor, forming an intricate, fragile column of frosted glass suspended in the deep. It is a stunning display of balance within nature. While the auroras and light pillars draw our eyes to the heavens, the ocean is quietly extending its own frozen architecture into the depths, revealing that profound, delicate beauty is always forming, even in the darkest, most hidden places. Following that sinking stream of cold brine further into the abyss, we eventually reach the very bottom of the Arctic Ocean, the abyssal plain. Down here, far removed from the shifting winds, the cracking ice, and the sunlight above, the water enters a state of almost incomprehensible stillness. This deep Arctic bottom water is some of the most isolated fluid on the planet. Because of the unique underwater ridges that surround the polar basin, the water at these immense depths circulates at an incredibly slow pace. Oceanographers estimate that it takes roughly 250 to 300 years for a single drop of water to complete a cycle in this deep, hidden realm. The water resting on the bottom of the world right now has been shielded from the atmosphere since the 18th century. It carries no memory of the modern world, only the quiet, heavy pressure of the deep and a temperature hovering just above freezing. As you imagine this immense, slow-moving body of water, hidden from the weather and the noise of the surface, you might feel a similar stillness settling gently into your own bones. There is no need to rush. Your breathing can naturally slow to match the unhurried current of the deep. Your mind can let go of the surface ripples of the day, sinking comfortably into a heavy, deeply protected state of rest. Rising slowly from that ancient, heavy stillness back toward the breathing surface, we find the ocean transitioning through the seasons in a beautifully rhythmic, gentle manner. During the autumn freeze-up, the open water does not instantly turn into a solid, rigid sheet. When the sea is restless with gentle waves and cold wind, the forming slush begins to organize itself into millions of perfect floating circles. As these circular rafts of ice bob on the undulating swells, they softly bump into one another. This constant gentle collision rounds their edges and pushes the slush upward into slightly raised rims. The result is a sprawling, mesmerizing expanse known as pancake ice. From a distance, the dark water appears to be covered in thousands of perfectly white frozen lily pads, stretching out as far as the eye can see. As the ocean breathes and swells, these ice discs slide and tap against each other, creating a soft, rhythmic, hushing sound that absorbs the noise of the wind. It is a transitional state of total grace. The ocean is slowly yielding to the cold, not by stiffening all at once, but by creating millions of soft, floating islands that gently bump and settle together, turning the fluid chaos of the sea into a beautifully structured, organized pattern of white circles. Resting peacefully upon these floating circular pads of ice, or sometimes hauling out onto the larger solid flows nearby, is a creature whose appearance is as striking as a carefully painted masterpiece. The ribbon seal is a true solitary wanderer of the polar seas, and it wears a coat unlike any other mammal on Earth. On a base of deep, velvety, dark brown or black fur, nature has drawn 4 stark, brilliant white bands, one around its neck, one around its tail, and one large, perfect circle on each of its sides. The contrast is astonishing, making the seal look exactly as if it has been wrapped in bright white ribbons. But this creature is not just a visual marvel, it is an acoustic one as well. Deep within its chest, the ribbon seal possesses a large, specialized air sac. When submerged beneath the quiet ice, it uses this sac to produce haunting, sweeping underwater vocalizations that sound like downward spiraling sirens or soft, echoing moans. These sounds carry for immense distances through the freezing water. The ribbon seal is a beautiful, solitary artist of the ice, proving that in a landscape completely dominated by endless white snow and dark water, life still finds a way to express itself through bold, contrasting geometry and deep, resonant, echoing music. Swimming just beneath the elegant striped seal is another form of life that completely defies our expectations of the ocean, representing a remarkable shift in scale. Floating suspended in the freezing currents are millions of tiny translucent creatures known as pteropods, though they are more affectionately called sea butterflies. They are actually microscopic marine snails, but over millions of years of evolution, they have entirely abandoned the sea floor. The muscular foot that a garden snail uses to slowly crawl has, in the sea butterfly, evolved into 2 delicate wing-like lobes. They literally fly through the underwater world, beating these tiny translucent wings in a slow, rhythmic motion. They flutter gracefully through the water column, hunting for microscopic plankton. Some possess fragile glass-like shells, while others are completely soft and transparent, looking like tiny swimming angels of the deep. They are impossibly delicate, yet they thrive by the millions in one of the most punishing environments on the planet. As these fragile, fluttering shapes glide through your imagination, let your own thoughts become just as weightless. Any lingering tension in your shoulders or your jaw can simply dissolve into the cool, supportive water. You're perfectly buoyant, allowing your mind to drift effortlessly from one gentle, microscopic image to the next, without holding on to anything at all. While these tiny winged snails flutter through the vastness of the ocean, the sweeping solid landmass of the coastal tundra harbours its own microscopic marvel of resilience. If you were to walk across the high Arctic plains looking for a forest, you would have to look straight down at your boots. Here grows the Salix arctica, or the Arctic willow, which holds the extraordinary title of being the world's smallest tree. It does not possess a towering trunk or a vast canopy. Instead, it grows entirely horizontally, pressing its twisting woody branches completely flat against the rocks and the thin layer of soil. By hugging the earth so closely, the tiny tree completely avoids the devastating, freezing winds that scour the plains, and it absorbs the very faint, lingering heat radiating from the permafrost below. Though it is only an inch or two tall, it is a true tree, growing tiny, perfect green leaves and soft, fuzzy catkins in the brief summer. An Arctic willow spread out over a few feet of rock might be several hundred years old, having grown only a fraction of a millimetre each season. It is a profound meditation on quiet survival and letting go of ego. The willow thrives completely, not by reaching stubbornly for the sky, but by staying grounded, adapting entirely to its circumstances, and finding a long, peaceful life in the quiet safety of the earth. When you elevate your perspective and view this same tundra from high above, the ground reveals a geometric secret so massive and perfect, it looks as though it was engineered by an ancient architect. Spanning for hundreds of miles across the flat plains, the Earth is divided into a continuous interlocking network of giant multi-sided shapes, looking exactly like a sprawling honeycomb made of earth and ice. These are known as tundra polygons. They are born from the deep rhythmic breathing of the seasons. As the intense winter cold penetrates the ground, the frozen soil contracts and cracks in perfect geometric patterns. In the spring, snowmelt fills these cracks and freezes solid, creating massive wedges of subterranean ice. Over thousands of years, this repetitive cycle of cracking, filling and freezing pushes the soil upward at the edges, outlining the polygons with raised green ridges and sunken water-filled centres. It is the raw mathematics of nature laid bare across the landscape. The earth is shifting and settling in profound order. It is a deeply soothing realization that even in a chaotic, freezing wilderness, there is an underlying structure, a slow, patient, geometric organization that organizes the land into perfectly balanced, repeating patterns over the centuries. Gliding effortlessly over this vast, patterned honeycomb of ice and earth is a shape of pure, blinding white. The snowy owl is the absolute sovereign of the open tundra. Because the Arctic experiences months of unending daylight during the summer, this owl, unlike almost all of its cousins around the world, has evolved to be a diurnal hunter, perfectly comfortable soaring under the bright, endless sun. It possesses striking golden eyes that can spot the slightest movement from miles away. But its most remarkable adaptation is the one you cannot see. It is the one you cannot hear. The leading edges of the snowy owl's flight feathers are highly specialized, covered in tiny comb-like serrations. As the bird beats its powerful wings, these serrated edges break up the turbulent air, completely muffling the sound of the rushing wind. Its flight through the crisp air is absolutely, astonishingly silent. It is a heavy, powerful creature moving through the world like a weightless ghost. Like the owl gliding soundlessly over the snow, your own awareness can move through this landscape without any effort. The body is growing heavier, sinking deeper into a state of total peace, completely undisturbed by the quiet world moving gently around you. You're moving through the scenes of your mind completely unburdened, leaving absolutely no disturbance behind. As the silent owl travels toward the distant horizon, it flies toward a sun that is performing a strange, magnificent optical illusion on the edge of the world. In the depths of the polar winter, long before the sun is astronomically due to rise and end the months of darkness, it will sometimes appear to suddenly lift above the ice. This is the Novaya Zemlya effect, a complex polar mirage caused by a sharp, dramatic temperature inversion in the atmosphere. When a layer of freezing air sits trapped beneath a layer of slightly warmer air, the atmosphere acts as an immense, curved magnifying glass. It bends the light from the sun completely over the curvature of the Earth, projecting its image over the horizon days, or sometimes even weeks, before the actual physical sun has returned. Because the light is being stretched and bent, the sun does not appear as a perfect circle, but often as a glowing, flattened rectangle, or a brilliant golden hourglass resting quietly on the ice. It is a breathtaking, almost surreal promise of light. It beautifully demonstrates that illumination can reach us even when the source is hidden far out of sight, bending around the obstacles of the world to offer a comforting, glowing reminder that the bright, warm days are always, inevitably, on their way back. This same deeply layered, magnifying atmosphere that bends the sunlight over the horizon is also capable of completely reshaping the landscape itself into something out of a dream. When the air is perfectly still, the complex layers of cold and warm air can catch the image of a distant flat ice shelf or a remote rocky island and stretch it vertically into the sky. This is known as a fata morgana. From miles away, the flat, unassuming ice appears to suddenly rise into towering, incredibly intricate floating castles, complete with soaring battlements, sheer cliffs, and shimmering elevated bridges. These phantom cities of ice hover silently just above the horizon, completely detached from the ground, shivering slightly in the cold, refractive air. Explorers have historically mapped entire mountain ranges that never actually existed, completely fooled by these towering, majestic illusions of the atmosphere. To witness a fata morgana is to see the physical world become beautifully flexible and untethered. It is as if the landscape itself has closed its eyes and begun to dream, projecting its own quiet, fantastical imagination into the open sky. The boundaries between the solid ice, the open water, and the thin air dissolve entirely, creating a soft, shifting reality where floating castles stand sentinel in the twilight, gently inviting the resting mind to let go of all solid constraints and follow the landscape into a deep, limitless, and beautifully dreaming state. As those shimmering phantom cities of the Fata Morgana dissolve back into the velvet horizon, the atmosphere settles into a profound, crystalline clarity, revealing the quiet geometry of the ice itself. Here, in the heart of the deepest winter, we find a curious and beautiful phenomenon known as blue moat formation. Around the massive grounded icebergs that stand like sentinels in the frozen bays, a ring of dark, liquid water often persists even when the rest of the sea is frozen solid. This is not caused by warmth, but by the rhythmic, tireless movement of the tides. As the entire ocean floor breathes, lifting and lowering the great ice sheet, the stationary iceberg remains anchored to the seabed. This creates a zone of constant friction and motion, a literal moat of liquid sapphire that never truly closes. It is a stunning visual metaphor for the mind's own resilience. Even when the world feels frozen or static, there is a part of us that remains fluid, moving in rhythm with a deeper internal tide. It reminds us that movement does not always require travel. Sometimes it is the simple rhythmic act of staying present that keeps our inner waters from freezing over. This liquid ring serves as a doorway to the vibrant hidden gardens that cling to the underside of the sea ice. While the top of the ice is a desert of wind and snow, the bottom is a lush hanging meadow. Microscopic organisms called diatoms thrive here, weaving intricate golden brown filaments that dangle into the freezing current. During the spring, as the sun begins to pierce through the translucent ice, these ice algae perform a miracle of efficiency. They are specially adapted to photosynthesize in near-total darkness, capturing the faintest glimmers of light that filter through meters of frozen water. They are the true foundation of all Arctic life, a silent, microscopic pasture that feeds the entire ocean. It is remarkable to think that the massive whales and powerful bears ultimately depend on these fragile, sunlit threads. As you picture these golden filaments swaying in the slow, dark current, allow your own awareness to settle into a similar state of receptivity. You don't need to reach out for anything. You can simply rest and allow the quiet energy of the moment to nourish you. The body knows how to sustain itself in the quiet, just as these tiny plants thrive in the shadows of the ice. Beyond these hanging gardens, in the deep channels between the Arctic islands, we encounter a creature that embodies the spirit of unhurried, ancient patience. The Greenland halibut, a flatfish of deep, earthy browns and greys, spends its life in the crushing pressure of the deep sea. Unlike its relatives in warmer waters, the Arctic halibut grows with incredible slowness, often taking decades to reach its full size, Because it lives in such a cold, stable environment, its heart beats with a slow, deliberate cadence that mirrors the shifting of the tectonic plates. It moves through the dark water with a minimal, graceful undulation, often hovering perfectly still for hours on end, becoming indistinguishable from the silty seabed. This is a life of absolute economy and deep presence. The halibut does not chase the world, it waits for the world to come to it. By mimicking this stillness, your own heart can find a slower, more rhythmic pace. The heavy pressure of the day is lifting, replaced by the cool, supportive weight of a deep-sea calm. There is no urgency in the deep, only the steady, patient flow of time passing through the water. As we rise from the silty depths toward the rocky coastlines, the texture of the Arctic changes from fluid to solid, ancient stone. Along the shores of the Canadian Arctic we find the rock rivers, or stone stripes, a geological wonder born from the constant shivering of the earth. Through a process called cryoturbation, the repeated freezing and thawing of the soil actually sorts the rocks by size. Over centuries, the earth behaves like a slow-motion vibrating table, pushing the larger boulders into long, winding stripes and the smaller pebbles into smooth, parallel paths. The result is a landscape that looks as if it has been meticulously raked by a giant invisible hand. These stone rivers flow at a pace of mere millimeters per decade, creeping toward the sea with a geological inevitability. It is a striking display of how even the most chaotic, scattered elements of life can be organized into beautiful, ordered patterns if given enough time and the right rhythm. The earth is constantly sorting itself, tidying its edges, and finding its way toward a settled, harmonious state. You can trust that your own thoughts are doing the same, settling into their proper places as you move closer towards sleep. Among these organized stone stripes, the air carries a scent that is both sharp and incredibly ancient. This is the scent of petrichor of the permafrost. When the topmost layer of the frozen ground, the active layer, briefly thaws in the summer, it releases organic compounds and minerals that have been locked in the ice for thousands of years. It is the smell of the Earth's memory, a rich, loamy aroma of damp moss, crushed stone, and ancient preserved peat. This scent is a physical bridge to the past, a fragrant reminder that nothing in the Arctic is ever truly lost. It is simply held in a long, cold embrace. Breathing in this imagined, cool air, you can feel a sense of profound continuity. The breath you take now is part of a cycle that has lasted for eons. The mind can simply drift on this ancient scent, letting go of the temporary concerns of the modern hour. Your breath is becoming a long, slow bridge between the waking world and the timeless realm of rest, where the past and present settle into a single, peaceful moment of being. Following this scent inland, we find ourselves standing before a massive silent wall of ice that seems to glow with an internal flickering light. This is a diamond glacier, so named because its surface is covered in a rare form of ice known as hoar frost. On very cold, clear nights, moisture in the air skips the liquid phase entirely and crystallizes directly onto the cold surface of the glacier. This creates millions of large, feather-like crystals that stand up on edge, some as large as a human hand. When the first rays of the sun hit these crystals, the entire glacier face erupts into a dazzling prismatic display, flashing with every colour of the spectrum. It looks as if the ice is encrusted with millions of unpolished diamonds. This fragile beauty exists only because of the intense cold and the absolute lack of wind. A single breath would shatter the delicate structures. It teaches us that some of the most spectacular displays in nature require a state of total, undisturbed stillness to form. As you find your own stillness now, you're allowing your own inner landscape to crystallize into something clear and beautiful. The mind is settling, the breath is calming, and the fragility of the day is being replaced by a solid, sparkling peace. In the shadow of these glittering glaciers, the Arctic wind performs its own sculptural masterpiece, carving the snow into high, sharp ridges known as sastrugi. These are the sand dunes of the north, but instead of being soft and shifting, they are as hard as concrete. The wind acts like a master carpenter, planing the packed snow into aerodynamic wave-like shapes that can stretch for miles. Some sastrugi look like frozen white flames, others like the scales of a vast sleeping dragon. They align perfectly with the prevailing winds, providing a natural frozen compass for anyone travelling across the ice. The sastrugi are a testament to the power of persistence. The wind does not carve them in a day. It is the result of thousands of hours of steady, unrelenting pressure. It is a reminder that even the most invisible forces, like the wind or our own quiet intentions, can leave a lasting physical mark on the world. As the wind of your own thoughts begins to die down, the shapes they leave behind are becoming smoother, more rounded, and eventually they will fade into a single flat white expanse of total rest. Looking up from the carved snow, we see a bird that seems to be a piece of the sastrugi come to life. The ivory gull is the only bird in the world that remains in the high Arctic for the entire year, never once migrating to warmer lands. It is a creature of pure, blinding white, without a single dark feather on its body. This total whiteness allows it to disappear completely against the ice, a ghost in a white world. The ivory gull possesses a remarkably calm temperament. It is known to sit perfectly still for hours on a high ice crag, watching the world with small, dark, intelligent eyes. It survives by being a master of opportunity, finding small fish in the cracks of the ice, or following the polar bear at a respectful distance. Its life is one of absolute purity and focus. To think of the ivory gull is to imagine a life stripped of all unnecessary noise and colour. It is a minimalist existence, thriving on the very edge of what is possible. You can adopt this same simplicity now. You don't need colours or stories or plans. You only need the simple, pure white space of this moment, where the only task is to be still and breathe. Beneath the flight of the white gull, the sea ice itself is a living, breathing entity, and it has a vocabulary all its own. When the ice is young and very thin, it is called nilas. Nilas is so flexible that it doesn't break when a wave passes underneath. Instead, it bends and undulates like a sheet of dark grey silk. As it grows thicker, it becomes young ice, and eventually first-year ice, which is the colour of a pale robin's egg. But the most revered is the multi-year ice. This is ice that has survived at least one summer melt. Over time, the salt has been completely leached out, and the crystals have grown large and dense. Multi-year ice is a deep, resonant navy blue, and it is so strong it can crush steel. It is the elder of the ocean. This process of aging, of shedding the salt and becoming more dense and clear, is a beautiful reflection of our own journey toward wisdom. We shed the salt of our daily stresses, our experiences compress into clarity, and we become stronger and more resilient. You are currently in your own blue ice state, dense, calm, and incredibly deep, where the surface noise can no longer reach you. As this deep blue ice moves and shifts, it creates the most iconic sound of the polar world, the singing of the lead. A lead is a narrow crack of open water that opens up in the ice pack. As the tides and winds push the massive plates of ice back together, the edges grind against one another with immense force. But rather than a sharp, crashing sound, the extreme cold turns this movement into a long, low, melodic moan that can vibrate through the hull of a ship miles away. It sounds like a deep underwater organ or a choir of giants humming a single low note. This is the music of the Earth's crust in motion. It is a sound that bypasses the ears and is felt directly in the chest. It is a grounding, stabilizing frequency. As you listen to the rhythmic hum of this narration, let it act like the singing of the ice, a low, constant vibration that anchors you to the present moment. The entire Arctic is humming a lullaby of movement and pressure, a song that has been playing for millions of years. You're part of that song now, a single, quiet note in a vast, frozen symphony, drifting toward the final, peaceful silence of the night. The moon rises now over this singing ice, casting a silver glow that reveals the final mystery of this journey's chapter, the polar moonbow. Similar to a sundog, but far more elusive, a moonbow occurs when the light of a full moon is refracted through a thin mist of ice crystals. It appears as a faint ethereal arc of white light, a ghost of a rainbow stretching across the dark sky. Because the human eye cannot easily perceive colour in low light, the moonbow looks like a bridge made of liquid silver or woven starlight. It is a rare, fleeting gift, a reminder that even in the deepest darkness, there is enough light to create beauty if we are patient enough to see it. This silver bridge is your path now. It leads away from the world of facts and figures, away from the ice and the stone, and toward the soft, uncharted territory of dreams. You have travelled far through the north, from the deep blue glaciers to the singing leads, and now the silver bridge is waiting to carry you the rest of the way. The mind can simply drift across it, lighter than a sea butterfly, more silent than a snowy owl, until the Arctic and the waking world finally fade into a single, perfect and unbroken rest. As you drift across that silver bridge of starlight, the moonlit landscape below begins to reveal a texture as delicate as a lace veil draped over the frozen world. In the profound silence of a windless Arctic night, moisture from the deep, still air begins to settle upon every exposed surface, growing into what are known as ice ferns. These are not merely patches of frost, they are intricate, branching fractal structures that mimic the shape of prehistoric foliage. Each fern begins as a single, microscopic imperfection on a stone or a blade of dormant grass, and from that tiny seed, the ice crystals build outward in a series of self-similar branching paths. If you were to look closely, you would see that each crystalline leaf is a perfect geometric replica of the whole. They grow in the dark, fed by the invisible breath of the world, creating a silver garden that wilts at the first touch of the morning sun. It is a stunning display of the mathematics of beauty, a quiet reminder that even in a place of extreme austerity, nature is constantly sketching complex, elegant patterns. The mind, too, can find comfort in this fractal piece, letting go of complex thoughts to simply follow the branching silver lines of this frozen garden into a state of deep, symmetrical calm. The silver texture of the ice ferns finds a soft organic echo in the deep, silent woods that mark the Arctic's southern boundary. Here, in the sprawling boreal forest that rings the pole, lives the great grey owl, often called the Phantom of the North. Clad in a dense, multi-layered plumage of silver grey and charcoal, the owl is a master of blending into the vertical shadows of the spruce and fir trees. But its most remarkable feature is its massive circular facial disc, which acts as a biological satellite dish. This disc is composed of stiff, specialised feathers that funnel the faintest sounds of the world directly into the owl's asymmetrical ears. In the dead of winter, the great grey owl can hear the tiny rhythmic scratching of a lemming moving through tunnels buried 2 feet beneath the solid frozen snow. It sits on a branch, perfectly still, listening to the invisible world. It does not need to see to know exactly where the life of the forest is pulsing. As you find your own stillness now, allow your senses to soften in the same way. You don't need to look for anything. You can simply listen to the quiet, steady rhythm of your own heart, a soft sound that connects you to the deep, hidden pulse of the world, knowing that even in the stillness, you are part of a vast and living whole. This acute sensitivity to the hidden world is shared by a creature that lives far out on the shifting white plains of the sea ice. The ringed seal, the most common resident of the Arctic Ocean, spends much of its life in a world of total icy darkness beneath the pack. To survive, it must maintain a series of breathing holes that it meticulously keeps open with the sharp claws on its foreflippers. But above these holes, hidden beneath a protective dome of wind-blown snow, the seal carves out a secret sanctuary known as a subnivean lair. This is a hollow blue-lit cave of snow, completely invisible from the surface, where the seal can rest and nurse its young in relative warmth. The thick walls of snow act as a perfect thermal insulator, trapping the seal's body heat and creating a microclimate that can be 20 degrees warmer than the freezing air outside. It is a hidden world of safety and quiet. Inside the lair, the only sound is the rhythmic liquid lap of the seawater in the breathing hole. As you imagine this blue-lit, snow-muffled sanctuary, your own room can feel just as safe and secluded. You're tucked away from the cold, wrapped in a protective layer of quiet, allowing your breath to settle into the same calm oceanic rhythm as the resting seal. The body grows heavier now, and the breath settles into a deep, effortless cycle. There is no need to hold on to the edges of the day. The mind can simply drift, lighter and more fluid with every passing moment. Transitioning from the seal's hidden lair back into the open moonlit expanse, we find the very ground beneath us behaving like a slow, rhythmic tide. This is the phenomenon of frost heaving, a process that turns the solid earth into a sculptural medium. When water in the soil freezes, it does not merely fill the gaps between the grains, it forms ice lenses, which are flat, expanding plates of pure ice. These lenses exert an incredible upward pressure, lifting the soil, the rocks, and the vegetation toward the sky. Over the course of a single winter, the landscape can physically rise by several inches. In the spring, as the ice lenses melt, the earth settles back down with a long, heavy sigh. This constant seasonal breathing of the earth is what creates the undulating, wave-like mounds seen across the tundra. It is a slow-motion dance between the water and the soil. To think of the earth itself rising and falling with the seasons is to recognize a planetary heartbeat, a slow, deep rhythm that encompasses centuries. You're sinking now into that same ancient rhythm, allowing the heavy, grounded part of yourself to settle, just as the earth settles back into its quiet summer rest after a long winter of expansion. Within this breathing earth, the Arctic holds a treasury of colours that seem almost too vibrant for such a stark environment. On the rocky cliffs of the Svalbard archipelago, the landscape is suddenly painted in splashes of brilliant electric orange and deep velvet red. These are not flowers, but ornithogenic lichens, a specialized family of fungi and algae that thrive only where seabirds nest in great numbers. The birds, travelling from the rich, nutrient-filled ocean, deposit nitrogen onto the cliffs, which the lichens use to create pigments of incredible intensity. These orange crusts grow with agonizing slowness, often expanding by only a single centimetre every 100 years. To look at a large patch of this orange lichen is to look at a living record of centuries of seabird migrations. It is a beautiful example of how life from the deep, dark sea can be transformed into brilliant sunlit colour on the land. It suggests that nothing is ever truly wasted. The energy of the ocean eventually finds its way to the highest cliffs, blooming into a vibrant, enduring masterpiece of patience. The mind can find rest in this slow transformation, recognizing that our own experiences, even the quiet and dark ones, eventually bloom into the colours of our character. This vibrant colour on the cliff stands in stark contrast to a strange, almost prehistoric phenomenon found on the surface of the great ice sheets. In the height of summer, the white snow can suddenly take on a soft rosy hue, a condition known as watermelon snow. This is caused by a species of cold-loving green algae that produces a red pigment to protect itself from the intense high-altitude ultraviolet rays of the sun. As the algae bloom in the melting surface layer, the snow begins to smell faintly of fresh sliced watermelon. It is a sensory delight, a field of pink snow that carries the scent of summer in the middle of a glacier. If you were to walk through it, your boots would leave bright pink tracks in the white expanse. It is a whimsical, unexpected miracle, a reminder that the Arctic is not just a world of blue and white, but a place where life uses every part of the spectrum to thrive. This pink snow is a fleeting gift, disappearing as soon as the autumn freeze returns, teaching us to cherish the brief, colourful moments of our own lives. As you drift towards sleep, let the scent of that imagined watermelon snow cool your mind, a sweet, fresh memory of a world where even the ice can bloom. The mind can simply drift now, floating through these images like a seed on the wind. Nothing needs to be held too tightly. The world is taking care of itself. Far beneath this pink snow, tucked into the side of a mountain in the Norwegian Arctic, lies a place of profound global significance that exists in a state of permanent freezing stillness. This is the Arctic World Archive, a digital sister to the famous Seed Vault. Here, on rolls of specialised ultra-durable film, the world's most precious cultural data is stored in a deep, abandoned coal mine. The film contains high-resolution copies of the works of Rembrandt, the blueprints of the Taj Mahal, and ancient manuscripts from the Vatican Library. Because the mountain is made of permafrost, the archive requires no electricity to stay at a constant freezing temperature, ensuring that the human story is preserved for at least 1,000 years. It is a library of the soul, resting in the dark, protected by the cold. There is a deep, abiding peace in knowing that while the world above is fast-paced and ever-changing, our most beautiful achievements are resting here in a state of eternal frozen safety. You can feel a similar sense of preservation now. Your own memories, your own stories, are safe and tucked away in the quiet chambers of your mind, allowing you to let go of the need to remember anything as you descend into sleep. As we move from the silent archive back toward the coastal waters, the texture of the Arctic shifts once again from the solid rock to the fluid, energetic world of the Arctic char. This resilient fish, with its shimmering silver-green scales and bright orange belly, is the northernmost freshwater fish in the world. But the char is a creature of two worlds. Some populations spend their entire lives in the landlocked lakes of the high north, while others are anadromous, migrating to the sea every summer before returning to their home rivers to spawn. What makes the char truly remarkable is its ability to radically change its physiology to survive. When it enters the salt water, its kidneys and gills adjust in a matter of days to handle the salt. When it returns to the fresh water, it transforms back. This incredible flexibility allows it to find food and safety in environments that would be fatal to almost any other fish. It is a master of transition. The char's life is a constant, graceful flowing between different states of being. You're in a transition of your own now, flowing from the salt of the waking world into the fresh, clear water of sleep. Like the char, you have the natural built-in ability to adjust, to let go of one state and fully embrace the next, moving with a fluid, silver grace toward your destination. This silver grace is also found in the polar mirage, a cousin to the Fata Morgana, but one that deals with the nature of the horizon itself. On very cold days, the atmosphere can bend the light of the horizon in such a way that the Earth appears to curve upward, creating what is known as a hollow Earth illusion. The distant ice and sea seem to rise up like a massive shallow bowl, with the viewer resting at the very bottom. It feels as if the world is rising up to embrace you, wrapping the horizon around your shoulders like a cold blue shawl. It is a perspective-shifting experience that makes the vastness of the Arctic feel intimate and protective. The world is no longer a flat, indifferent plain, it is a cradling space. As you envision this rising silver horizon, feel the same sense of being cradled by your own environment. The bed, the blankets, and the quiet air are all rising up to hold you, creating a safe, curved space where the rest of the world is kept at a comfortable, distant edge. As the silver horizon settles, we find ourselves standing on a remote beach in the Siberian Arctic, looking at a landscape of ice eggs. This is a rare and fleeting phenomenon that occurs only when the conditions of wind, water, and temperature are in perfect, delicate balance. When a thin layer of slush is buffeted by a steady, gentle wind and a rhythmic tide, the ice begins to roll against itself. Over several days, this rolling motion polishes the slush into thousands of perfectly smooth, oval-shaped spheres of ice, ranging from the size of a marble to the size of a large boulder. The beach becomes covered in a vast field of translucent white eggs, glowing softly in the twilight. They look like the hatchery of some ancient mythical sea creature. Each egg is a masterpiece of friction and flow, a solid object born from the constant gentle movement of the water. It is a beautiful reminder that even the most repetitive, mundane motions, like the breathing of the tide or the rhythm of our own breath, can eventually create something of profound, polished beauty. The eggs of ice eventually melt back into the sea, joining the global conveyor belt, a massive, slow-moving system of ocean currents that begins right here in the Arctic. As the cold, salty water of the north sinks into the depths, it pushes a massive volume of water south, starting a journey that will take over 1,000 years to complete. A single drop of water from the Arctic will travel past the equator, around the tip of Africa, through the Indian Ocean, and eventually resurface in the North Pacific. This deep underwater river is the primary way the Earth distributes heat and nutrients around the globe. It is the planet's circulatory system, and its heart beats here in the cold, quiet waters of the North. To think of this 1,000-year journey is to realize that we're all part of a single, slow, and magnificent cycle. The breath you take now, the rest you find tonight, is a small but vital part of the world's ongoing story. You're connected to the deep, slow currents of the Earth, moving toward a state of total global harmony. As the conveyor belt carries the water south, our journey through the Arctic reaches a place of absolute crystalline stillness. We're standing at the North Pole, where all longitudes meet and every direction is south. Here, the ice is several meters thick, resting upon an ocean that is 4,000 meters deep. In this spot, the Earth rotates beneath your feet, but you remain stationary, the axis around which the entire world turns. It is the ultimate center of calm. There is no wind here tonight, only the vast, star-studded sky and the deep indigo silence of the ice. You are at the center of your own world now, the point of perfect balance where all the stories and facts of the day have finally come to a rest. The silver bridge has carried you home. The ice ferns, the phantom owls, and the singing leads are all behind you now, part of a beautiful, fading dream. You are safe, you are warm, and you are exactly where you need to be. The Arctic is keeping its secrets now, whispered into the frozen air, as you finally drift into the deep, dark, and perfectly peaceful ocean of sleep. As the silver glow of the moonbow gently fades into the surrounding velvet dark, the surface of the freezing ocean begins to reveal a different kind of light, one born entirely from within the water itself. When the polar night is at its deepest and the sea is perfectly black, any subtle disturbance in the water, a passing current, the slow sweep of a whale's tail, or the gentle lap of a wave against a floating piece of ice, causes the ocean to spark with a brilliant luminescent blue. This is the quiet magic of bioluminescent copepods. These microscopic crustaceans possess delicate internal chemistry that reacts to movement, emitting a soft, cool glow that looks like liquid starlight scattered across the sea. If you were to trail your hand through this water, a glowing ribbon of blue would follow your fingertips, swirling and fading with an ethereal, slow-motion grace. It is a stunning realization that the darkest, coldest waters on the planet are quietly teeming with their own responsive illumination, waiting for just a gentle touch to reveal themselves. As you let your mind wander through this softly glowing sea, allow your thoughts to be just as fluid and weightless. You do not need to force any ideas or hold on to any images, just let them spark gently in the mind's eye and softly fade away, leaving behind a profound, illuminated peace in the dark. Floating quietly through this softly glowing water are the ancient sculpted remnants of the great glaciers, the icebergs. While they appear perfectly still and silent from a distance, standing like grand marble monuments in the dark, drawing closer reveals that they are engaged in a constant microscopic conversation with the sea. As the deep glacial ice slowly dissolves in the slightly warmer ocean, it releases millions of tiny, highly pressurized air bubbles that have been trapped within its crystalline structure for tens of thousands of years. As these ancient bubbles finally reach the surface of the ice and burst, they create a continuous rhythmic fizzing and popping sound. Sailors and glaciologists affectionately call this sound bergy seltzer. It is the acoustic signature of an iceberg, a delicate, effervescent whispering that fills the quiet air around it. It sounds like the soft crackle of a dying hearth fire, or the gentle patter of a light rain falling upon a still pond. Every single pop is the release of atmosphere from the Pleistocene epoch, the sound of the deep past finally exhaling into the present moment. Listening to this imagined, gentle fizzing, your own breath can naturally sync with the slow, steady exhalation of the ice. The body grows slightly heavier, the chest softens, and any remaining tension simply bubbles away, dissolving effortlessly into the calm surrounding air. Resting on the flat, upper expanses of these massive floating mountains of ice are tiny, perfectly cylindrical shafts that hold an unexpected world of warmth. Borne on high-altitude winds from distant deserts and volcanic plains, microscopic grains of dark dust occasionally settle upon the pure white ice. Because these dark specks absorb the faint heat of the sun much faster than the reflective snow around them, they slowly melt straight down, creating vertical water-filled tubes known as cryoconite holes. Each of these tiny sapphire blue wells acts as a miniature self-contained ecosystem. The dark sediment at the bottom harbours incredibly resilient microbes that thrive in the small pocket of liquid water, sheltered entirely from the freezing winds sweeping across the surface above. The water within these shafts is flawlessly clear, catching the ambient light and glowing like a polished gemstone set deep into the glacier. It is a brilliant microscopic oasis in a desert of ice. To look down into a cryoconite hole is to see how the smallest, most unassuming particle can create a perfect sheltered sanctuary through the simple, passive absorption of light. It beautifully illustrates that warmth and life can take root in the most imposing environments. As the ice silently cradles these tiny pools, you too are cradled, safe and completely sheltered in your own quiet space, warmed by the gentle rhythm of your resting pulse. Leaving the towering icebergs behind and moving toward the rocky, sheltered coastlines, we discover the source of the softest, most insulating material found anywhere in the natural world. The common eider is a large, sturdy sea duck that makes its home along the frigid Arctic shores. To protect her upcoming generation from the biting wind and the freezing ground, the mother eider performs an act of profound, tender devotion. She plucks the incredibly soft, dense down feathers directly from her own breast, using them to meticulously line the bowl of her nest. This eider down lacks the stiff central quills found in normal feathers. Instead, it is a chaotic, fluffy tangle of microscopic hooks that trap air perfectly, creating an unparalleled barrier against the cold. The nest becomes a cloud of pure, weightless warmth, so incredibly soft that the eggs rest completely insulated from the freezing stone beneath them. There is no harshness here, only the gentle, yielding embrace of a space designed specifically for deep, undisturbed rest. To imagine the texture of this nest is to feel the ultimate expression of physical comfort. As you picture this downy, protective layer, let that same profound softness drape over your own shoulders. Your bed is your nest, lined with quiet and warmth, allowing the mind to simply drift in a state of weightless, absolute security. Just beyond the rocky shores, where the tundra rolls out in low, sweeping hills, a sudden movement catches the eye. What appears to be a field of scattered snowdrifts suddenly rises and begins to move in perfect, fluid unison. These are Arctic hares, and unlike their solitary cousins in the south, they have adapted to the extreme exposure of the high north by gathering in massive, breathtaking herds. Sometimes numbering in the hundreds, or even thousands, these stark white creatures move across the landscape like a flowing river of snow. When they rest, They tuck their long, black-tipped ears flat against their backs and pull their paws in tight, becoming perfectly spherical to conserve every ounce of heat. Seen together on the tundra, they look like hundreds of soft white pearls scattered across the pale earth. Moving as a collective, they find warmth, safety, and a shared, silent rhythm. There is a deep hypnotic beauty in watching such a massive, gentle migration. They do not run with panic. They flow with a coordinated, bounding grace that leaves only the faintest tracks behind. It reminds the watching mind that moving harmoniously with the world is far more powerful than standing alone against the cold. As they settle back into the snow, becoming still once more, you can feel your own thoughts settling with them, becoming quiet, rounded, and perfectly at peace in the stillness. Hidden completely from the view of the bounding hares, buried deep beneath the thick insulating blanket of the winter snow, lies a complex, invisible metropolis. The collared lemming, a small, stout rodent, does not hibernate when the long night falls. Instead, it relies on the remarkable thermal properties of the snowpack itself. Because deep snow naturally traps the faint geothermal heat rising from the earth, the temperature at the soil level remains significantly warmer than the bitter, howling air above. Taking advantage of this hidden warmth, the lemmings construct a vast, intricate network of subnivean tunnels, a sprawling subterranean subway system that spans across the dark tundra. They carve out spherical nesting chambers lined with soft, dried grasses and long, winding corridors that allow them to travel, forage, and live their entire winter lives completely insulated from the raging storms. It is a completely self-contained, cozy world, hidden in plain sight beneath a featureless white plain. Knowing that this hidden network of life hums quietly under the snow brings a sense of deep, layered comfort. The surface of your day might be cold or busy, but beneath it all, there is always a warm, protected space where the mind can retreat, rest, and feel entirely secure. You can let go of the surface now, sinking down into your own quiet, comfortable layers. Travelling southward from the open tundra, the landscape slowly begins to change, signalling the very edge of the world's great forests. Here, at the Arctic tree line, the trees do not stand tall and straight. They are known as krummholz, a word that translates to crooked wood. Subjected to centuries of relentless freezing winds that carry abrasive crystals of ice, these spruce and fir trees are naturally sculpted into stunning asymmetrical shapes. They grow entirely parallel to the ground, their branches sweeping out in a single direction like a green flag caught in a permanent gale. Often, a group of krummholz will grow tightly interwoven, their branches locking arms to create a dense shared thicket that perfectly deflects the wind and traps insulating snow. They are a physical manifestation of elegance, endurance, and profound adaptation. The trees find their strength not in rigid defiance, but in a graceful, sweeping surrender to the elements, bending their forms to harmonize with the powerful forces around them. To look at these beautifully twisted, resilient trees is to understand the deep wisdom of flexibility. Nothing needs to be held too rigidly. You can allow your own posture to soften now, yielding to the heavy comfort of the mattress, letting the gentle currents of sleep shape you into a posture of perfect, deep relaxation. Returning to the height of the brief Arctic summer, when the sun is a constant companion in the sky, we can observe a quiet, mesmerizing phenomenon involving the simple casting of a shadow. Because the sun does not rise in the east and set in the west, but rather travels in a massive, slow circle around the entire horizon, the shadows cast by the rocks and the ancient krummholz trees behave in a way seen nowhere else on Earth. If you were to watch the shadow of a single standing stone over the course of 24 hours, you would see it act as a perfect natural sundial. The shadow does not simply lengthen and disappear into the night. It stretches out and sweeps in a complete, unbroken 360-degree circle across the tundra. It is the visual ticking of a planetary clock, a slow, sweeping hand that traces the exact rotation of the Earth beneath the light, It is a profound, hypnotic movement. There is no abrupt end to the day, no sudden darkness, only the smooth, continuous circular flow of time. Following this slow, sweeping shadow in the mind is deeply settling. The rotation is so steady, so predictably calm, that the mind easily falls into its soothing orbital rhythm, replacing the rush of passing hours with a sense of eternal, unhurried continuity. This grand, circular motion of the sun is beautifully mirrored by a massive, slow-spinning force deep within the Arctic Ocean itself. This is the Beaufort Gaia, a colossal, clockwise rotating ocean current that completely dominates the polar basin. Driven by the prevailing winds and the rotation of the planet, this immense whirlpool acts as a giant icy reservoir. Over many years, it slowly gathers and traps vast amounts of fresh water from melting glaciers and northern rivers, along with massive floating islands of multi-year sea ice. The gyre spins with a majestic, almost imperceptible slowness, taking years for a single piece of ice to complete one full rotation. It is the great beating heart of the Arctic's climate system, holding and circulating the cold water with incredible patience. To envision this immense, slow-turning wheel of deep blue water and brilliant white ice is to feel the sheer, staggering scale of planetary mechanics. The vastness of the gyre absorbs all sudden movements, turning the chaotic waves into a single unified sweep of motion. As you breathe in, imagine following the slow, wide arc of that great current. As you breathe out, feel yourself sinking deeper into its steady, circular momentum, holding your resting body in a state of perfect spinning equilibrium. Within the slow, sweeping currents of that massive gyre, the most profound migration on the planet is happening every single day, completely unseen from the surface. This is the movement of the deep scattering layer. Composed of billions of small fish, squid and tiny crustaceans, this massive biological layer rests in the deep pitch-black ocean during the day to avoid the light. But as the sun above begins to dim, an invisible ancient signal ripples through the water. In absolute unison, this entire massive community of life begins to slowly ascend toward the surface. It is a vertical migration of staggering proportions, a slow upward drift of millions of tons of life rising together under the cover of the polar night. As dawn approaches, they gracefully sink back down into the comforting heavy darkness of the abyss. This daily, rhythmic rising and falling is like the slow, deep breathing of the ocean itself. It is a cycle of perfect, unhurried precision. Sinking down with this layer in the imagination is an invitation to profound rest. You can let go of the surface light, sinking down into the quiet, heavy and deeply comforting darkness of your own internal ocean. The migration brings us to the very floor of the sea, where the water is thick and perfectly still, waiting quietly for the gentle shifts and hidden wonders that the ocean currents have yet to slowly unveil. Resting quietly at the very bottom of this deep, circulating gyre, far below the reach of any storm or shifting ice, the ocean floor reveals a delicate, unexpected masterpiece of the abyss. Down in this crushing, pitch-black environment, where the water is incredibly cold and thick, thrive the hexactinellid sponges, more beautifully known as glass sponges. Unlike the soft, porous sponges found in warm, shallow tropical reefs, these ancient organisms build their intricate skeletons entirely out of pure, extracted silica, the exact same biological material used to create flawless glass. They grow with an agonizing, beautiful slowness into complex, twisting, vase-like shapes, looking exactly like fragile spun sugar baskets or intricate chandeliers resting silently in the dark. Because the water at these immense depths moves so sluggishly, and the near-freezing temperatures dramatically slow their internal metabolism, these pale, ghostly structures are among the longest living creatures on the face of the Earth. Some of the larger, more elaborate glass sponges have been sitting perfectly still in the dark for over 10,000 years. They simply wait, filtering the incredibly faint dusting of microscopic nutrients that slowly drifts down from the sunlit world miles above. To envision these crystalline vases surviving perfectly intact for millennia in the crushing dark is to understand a profound truth about endurance. True resilience does not always require a hardened armor or a fierce struggle. Sometimes the most fragile-looking, delicate structures, when placed in a state of absolute, undisturbed stillness, can quietly outlast the rise and fall of entire mountain ranges. Rising slowly from those ancient glassy gardens, we follow the ascending currents back toward the frozen white ceiling of the sea. When we reach the underside of the pack ice, it appears to be a solid, impenetrable block of frozen water. However, if you were to observe this ice under a powerful high-resolution microscope, you would discover that it is not a solid wall at all, but a sprawling, complex and highly porous labyrinth. As the ocean seawater freezes into solid ice, the crystalline structure actively rejects the salt. This expelled salt creates tiny, highly concentrated pockets of supersaline liquid which eventually connect to form millions of microscopic winding tunnels known as brine channels. These channels are like an intricate upside-down river delta, a microscopic fluid wetland trapped entirely within the rigid architecture of the ice. They weave and branch out, creating a hidden flowing network that refuses to freeze, even in the dead of the polar winter. It is a stunning poetic reversal of how we typically perceive the physical world. Within the hardest, most unyielding surfaces, there are always hidden pathways of flow, flexibility, and movement. It gently reminds the resting mind that even when circumstances feel entirely frozen, or when our thoughts feel rigid, there are always tiny, unseen rivers of warmth and vitality quietly flowing through us, keeping our internal systems beautifully alive, perfectly balanced, and always quietly moving forward. Navigating smoothly through these microscopic, icy rivers is a creature so unbelievably small, yet so fundamentally vital, that it serves as the energetic, beating heart of the entire polar marine ecosystem. This is the Arctic copepod, a tiny translucent crustacean no larger than a single grain of rice. During the brief, brilliant weeks of the sunlit summer, these copepods graze tirelessly on the blooming ice algae, but their true marvel lies in how they prepare for the long, freezing dark. They possess the unique ability to convert their food into pure liquid lipids, storing it in a large transparent sac that runs the length of their delicate bodies. As they fill with this rich, energy-dense oil, they begin to catch the light, glowing with a brilliant golden amber hue. They look exactly like millions of tiny floating droplets of liquid sunshine suspended in the freezing sea. When the dark months finally return, they descend into the deep, quiet water and enter a state of profound, suspended animation, living entirely, slowly, off their own internal golden light. As you picture these millions of tiny glowing droplets drifting peacefully in the dark, notice how your own breath has become remarkably steady and deep. The body is growing comfortably heavier, sinking deeper into the mattress with every exhalation. You too have gathered all the warmth and energy you need from the waking hours, and now you can simply rest, entirely sustained by your own quiet internal reserves, allowing the conscious mind to completely let go. While the golden copepods drift in the deep offshore currents, the surface of the coastal waters begins its own beautiful, transformative journey into sleep. When late autumn arrives in the deep, sheltered, rock-walled fjords of Svalbard and Greenland, the transition from fluid water to solid ice is a masterclass in quiet, sweeping grace. Because these narrow, winding inlets are perfectly protected from the violent swells of the open ocean, the surface of the water becomes flawlessly, impossibly still. As the ambient air temperature plummets, a delicate, visually striking phenomenon known as grease ice begins to form. A microscopic, soupy layer of ice crystals gathers uniformly on the surface, dampening even the smallest, most insignificant ripples. This gives the dark, freezing water the incredibly smooth, matte appearance of spilled oil or heavy, dark velvet. Slowly, deliberately, and without a single discernible sound, this velvet layer thickens and connects, turning into a continuous, flexible sheet of dark, transparent ice. It is like watching a massive liquid mirror slowly cure into a flawless sheet of solid black glass. The sheer, undisturbed tranquility of this freezing process is deeply mesmerizing. There is absolutely no struggle against the descending cold. The water simply yields, calming its own restless surface until it becomes a perfect, permanent reflection of the surrounding snow-draped mountains and the first, pale stars of the evening. It is a profound, comforting lesson in how embracing total stillness can transform chaotic, restless movement into a surface of absolute, unshakable clarity. Resting gently upon this newly formed glass-like ice are some of the most endearing and perfectly adapted creatures found anywhere in the high north, the harp seal pups. Born directly onto the exposed frozen surface during the harshest weeks of the year, these pups enter the world wearing a coat of pure, blinding white fur, known to biologists as a lanugo. This downy coat is so incredibly thick and fluffy that the resting pups look exactly like small, breathing snowdrifts seamlessly blending into the ice. But this beautiful white fur serves a purpose far beyond simple camouflage. It is a stunning marvel of natural solar engineering. The individual hairs of the lanugo are not actually white, they're completely hollow and transparent. They act like thousands of tiny fibre optic cables, allowing the weak, low-angled rays of the polar sun to pass directly through the thick fur, channeling the light straight down to the pup's dark, heat-absorbing skin beneath. The hollow, air-filled hairs then perfectly trap that gathered warmth, preventing it from radiating back out into the freezing wind. It is a highly efficient, completely passive heating system. To think of the small pup resting there, eyes closed, effortlessly gathering deep warmth from the pale winter sun, is to feel a deep sense of natural provision. You can wrap yourself in that same imagined perfect warmth right now. Feel completely protected, nestled in the heavy blankets, knowing that you are safely and perfectly insulated from the demands and the cold noise of the waking world. Far inland, moving away from the coastal sea ice where the seals sleep, the landscape transforms into the massive, towering ice sheet of the Greenland interior, stretching uninterrupted to the horizon. From above, it appears to be a landscape entirely locked in solid, unmoving, heavy white. Yet, hidden miles beneath this crushing, unimaginable weight of ancient ice, trapped deep in the bowl-like rocky depressions of the continental bedrock, are immense bodies of liquid water. These are subglacial lakes. They are kept from freezing by a perfect, delicate balance. The immense insulating pressure of the 2-mile thick ice above them traps the incredibly faint, persistent geothermal heat radiating upward from the Earth's core. These massive lakes have remained completely sealed off from the surface world and from the atmosphere for hundreds of thousands of years. The water within them is some of the most ancient, isolated and pristine on the entire planet, resting in absolute total darkness, completely undisturbed by the howling wind or the shifting seasonal weather above. Knowing these hidden, silent lakes exist offers a beautiful, deeply grounding comfort. It whispers to us that no matter how frozen, rigid, or impenetrable the surface of the world, or our own exterior may sometimes appear, there are always deep, hidden reserves of pure fluidity and ancient peace resting quietly beneath. Your mind can naturally drift down to those deep, calm waters now. You don't need to stay on the busy, conscious surface. You can let your awareness sink effortlessly into that vast, hidden stillness where time slows to an absolute comforting halt. High above this ancient buried water, where the vast sweeping plains of the ice sheet finally give way to the mossy tundra, the thin Arctic sky is occasionally graced by a truly majestic high-altitude migration. The tundra swan, a bird of staggering elegance and pure, flawless snow-white plumage, travels thousands of miles to breed in the quiet, undisturbed isolation of the northern marshlands. What makes their journey so breathtaking is not just the distance, but the sheer, staggering altitude at which they choose to fly. Catching the powerful, high-altitude jet streams, these swans have been recorded flying at elevations of over 26,000 feet, high enough to comfortably look down upon the jagged, snow-capped peaks of the Himalayas. Up in the thin, freezing, deep blue stratosphere, they move with a slow, powerful, incredibly rhythmic wing beat, calling out to one another with soft, haunting musical notes that echo across the empty sky. To imagine these bright white birds gliding effortlessly through the deep blue, freezing upper atmosphere is to feel an incredible sense of elevation, freedom, and emotional release. They are moving gracefully above the heavy weather, above the thick clouds, finding a smooth, effortless, and highly elevated path through the very roof of the world. As you picture their slow, synchronized flight, allow your own thoughts to become just as elevated and unburdened, letting the heavy, complex concerns of the ground fall far, far below you, drifting into the blue. When those high-flying swans finally descend to rest on the spongy summer tundra, they share the vast landscape with the undisputed silent monarch of the north, the polar bear. While we often focus on their immense, terrifying strength and their thick, insulating fur, the true secret to their absolute mastery of the ice lies quietly at the very bottom of their massive feet. A polar bear's paw is incredibly large, often as wide as a dinner plate, designed specifically to act like a natural snowshoe, evenly distributing its heavy weight so it doesn't break through the delicate, treacherous ice crust. But if you were to look closely at the black, leathery pads of their feet, you would discover they are entirely covered in thousands of tiny soft bumps called papillae. These microscopic structures create an incredible amount of friction, acting exactly like thousands of tiny natural suction cups that grip the slick, wet ice with perfect, unyielding precision. Furthermore, their paws are heavily furred between the toes, completely muffling the sound of their footsteps. A magnificent creature weighing over 1,000 pounds can walk across a brittle, frozen landscape without making a single, discernible sound. It is a true masterpiece of quiet, composed power. The bear moves with an absolute heavy grace, leaving nothing but soft, wide, vanishing tracks in the snow. It beautifully reminds us that true presence and strength do not need to be loud or forceful. We can move through the world with soft, deliberate steps, leaving only a peaceful, quiet imprint behind us. Leaving the bear's silent tracks fading on the tundra and looking back out toward the open, deep-water coastal bays, we might occasionally witness an event of staggering, slow-motion majesty. When a massive, towering iceberg drifts slightly into warmer waters, its deeply submerged base slowly begins to melt. Over time, this subtly, yet profoundly, shifts the iceberg's centre of gravity. Without any sudden warning, millions of tons of solid ice will slowly, gracefully begin to roll in the water. This is the mesmerising flipping of an iceberg. As the colossal structure turns over in the sea, the chaotic, snow-covered, jagged top plunges beneath the foaming waves, and the long-hidden, mysterious underside is finally lifted into the sunlight. This newly exposed ice is absolutely breathtaking. Having been sculpted, washed, and polished by the gentle, constant friction of the ocean currents for decades, it is completely smooth, resembling flawlessly carved monumental glass. Stripped of all the white, light-scattering air bubbles by the pressure of the sea, it glows with a profound, luminous, almost electric sapphire blue. It is a beautiful, dramatic revelation of hidden depths. a structure that seemed entirely familiar and stark white suddenly rolls over to reveal a completely different, highly polished and vibrantly colourful identity. It is a comforting, poetic reminder that the parts of ourselves we keep submerged, the parts quietly smoothed by the deep currents of our own experiences, are often the most beautiful, deep, and brilliant parts of who we are, simply waiting for the right quiet moment to slowly roll into the light. As the deep blue iceberg finally settles into its new, perfectly balanced position in the water, the air around it returns to a state of profound, almost physical acoustic purity. In the deepest, most remote parts of the Arctic landscape, far from the bustling shipping lanes and the constant low-frequency hum of human machinery, the atmosphere achieves a level of absolute quiet that is virtually impossible to experience anywhere else on the globe. Without the constant overlapping roar of civilization to distract them, the ears begin to slowly recalibrate. In this absolute crystalline silence, the threshold of hearing drops dramatically. You can clearly hear the soft rhythmic swish of a raven's wings passing by from over half a mile away. You can hear the delicate, high-pitched, crystal tinkling sound of your own breath instantly freezing in the air before your face. The silence here is not an empty, frightening void. It is a rich, expansive, and supportive canvas that beautifully amplifies the smallest, most delicate and intimate sounds of life. This profound level of quiet is deeply healing for a mind so accustomed to the endless noise of the modern world. It acts as a soothing acoustic balm, gently sweeping away all the mental clutter and leaving behind only a vast, clear, and perfectly still space. As you rest securely in this imagined perfect silence, allow the lingering noise of your own thoughts to fade out into that vast white distance, easing you further and further into the deep, restorative and unbroken quiet of the polar night. Continuing from the profound, absolute quiet of the polar night, where the air is so perfectly still you can hear the freezing of your own breath, the sky itself occasionally begins to speak. For centuries, solitary explorers and indigenous observers reported hearing the aurora borealis, a claim long dismissed by early scientists because the luminous lights occur far too high in the thermosphere for sound to travel to the ground. Yet, the quiet truth of the ice reveals a fascinating acoustic secret. When a particularly powerful solar storm ignites the night sky with sweeping ribbons of green and violet, it releases a massive cascade of invisible electromagnetic waves. As these waves wash over the Earth's surface, they interact directly with the sharp, pointed objects scattered across the tundra. The tip of a dormant pine needle, the jagged edge of a frost-covered rock, or even the rough fibres of a heavy wool coat. This interaction creates a phenomenon known as electrophonic hearing. It manifests in the absolute silence as a delicate, incredibly faint crackling, a soft, localized hiss that sounds remarkably like the rustling of dry leaves or the gentle sizzle of static electricity. You're not hearing the distant lights themselves, but rather the immediate physical world around you, whispering in direct response to the energy of the cosmos. It is an intimate, localized conversation between the frozen ground and the solar wind, occurring just inches from your ears. To imagine this delicate, hissing response is to realize that the atmosphere is not an empty, silent void, but a highly conductive, beautifully resonant ocean of energy. When the long, crackling darkness of the winter finally gives way to the endless circling sun of the Arctic summer, that same solar energy is captured in a completely different, profoundly gentle manner. Dotting the rocky, barren slopes of the high tundra are tiny, delicate splashes of vibrant, buttery yellow. These are the Arctic poppies, incredibly fragile-looking flowers that possess a masterful, deeply intuitive relationship with the light. Unlike most plants that remain stationary, the Arctic poppy exhibits a remarkable behaviour known as heliotropism. Throughout the continuous daylight of the polar summer, the flexible stem of the flower physically moves, slowly pivoting its cup-shaped blossom to perfectly track the sun as it makes its wide, continuous journey around the horizon. But this is not merely a stretching toward the light, it is a brilliant act of thermal engineering. The curved, overlapping yellow petals act exactly like a miniature biological parabolic dish. They capture the faint, low-angled rays of the sun and reflect them directly inward, focusing the heat perfectly onto the reproductive centre of the flower. The temperature inside the gentle cup of the poppy can be significantly warmer than the surrounding biting air. It creates its own perfect heated microclimate, a tiny sanctuary of warmth in a landscape of cold. This beautiful slow-motion dance with the light ensures the seeds can properly mature. It is a stunning reminder that incredible resilience often comes from staying soft, remaining perfectly receptive, and slowly turning to face whatever warmth the present moment has to offer. Moving silently through these fields of sun-tracking flowers is a creature that has mastered the cold from the inside out. The Arctic wolf, covered in a thick, blindingly white coat, wanders across miles of sub-zero ice and frozen stone without ever suffering from the cold in its paws. If a human were to walk barefoot on the ice, the heat from our warm blood would rapidly escape, melting the snow beneath us and dangerously chilling our core. But the wolf possesses an elegant built-in thermal mechanism known as countercurrent heat exchange. Within the slender legs of the wolf, the arteries carrying warm, oxygen-rich blood down from the heart run immediately parallel, almost touching, the veins carrying the cooled blood back up from the feet. As the blood travels downward, it transfers its heat directly across the blood vessel walls to the returning venous blood. By the time the blood actually reaches the pads of the wolf's paws, it has been cooled to a temperature just barely above the freezing point of the ice itself. Because the paws are kept so cool, they do not melt the snow, preventing the build-up of ice crystals between their toes, and almost zero body heat is lost to the frozen ground. The warmth is perfectly, efficiently recycled back into the animal's core. The body naturally knows how to protect its most vital centre, pulling its energy inward to maintain a perfect, unwavering balance. Just as the wolf seamlessly conserves its warmth, you too can naturally draw your energy inward now. There is no need to expend effort outward into the world. You can simply let your awareness rest deeply at your centre, feeling completely sustained, secure, and perfectly insulated from the demands of the day. From the soft, insulated paws of the wandering wolf, the landscape dramatically shifts in scale, rising upward to form one of the most imposing and silent monuments on the face of the earth. Located on the remote, glacially carved expanse of Baffin Island lies Mount Thor. While it is not the tallest peak in the world, it holds a geographical record that is almost difficult for the human mind to fully comprehend. Mount Thor features the Earth's greatest purely vertical drop. One side of the mountain is a sheer, uninterrupted cliff face of solid, ancient granite that plummets straight down for over 4,000 feet. The rock face actually overhangs slightly, meaning that if you were to drop a stone from the summit, it would fall for nearly a mile without ever touching the side of the mountain before reaching the silent valley floor. Standing before this colossal wall of stone, one is enveloped by a profound, heavy silence. It is a monument of deep geological time, carved over millions of years by the slow, grinding retreat of unimaginable glaciers. The mountain does not strive, it does not move, it simply exists in a state of absolute unbreakable permanence. To visualize this towering, sheer face of ancient granite is to feel an incredible sense of grounding. It puts the fleeting, temporary worries of our daily lives into a beautiful, humbling perspective. The mountain is an anchor of total stillness, inviting the mind to lean against its immovable strength and find peace in its vast, silent endurance. Looking straight up past the staggering sheer summit of that granite peak, the high, freezing atmosphere occasionally paints a masterpiece that seems to defy gravity itself. When the sky is filled with a thin, almost invisible veil of cirrus clouds made entirely of flat hexagonal ice crystals. A rare and breathtaking optical illusion can occur. This is the circumzenithal arc. Unlike a traditional rainbow, which is formed by the refraction of light through liquid water droplets near the horizon, this arc is formed by sunlight passing through solid ice crystals resting high in the zenith, directly overhead. Because of the specific angle at which the light bends through the floating ice prisms, the resulting arc curves away from the sun, creating the distinct appearance of a brightly coloured upside-down rainbow. It looks exactly like a vibrant painted smile stretching across the dome of the heavens. Furthermore, because pure ice refracts light more cleanly than water, the colours in a circumzenithal arc are often exceptionally vivid, distinct and saturated. A stunning band of deep violet, bright sapphire, emerald, and ruby resting quietly in the pale blue. It is a fleeting ethereal apparition, a gentle reminder that if we simply change our perspective and look upward, the world is capable of bending the light in entirely new, beautiful and delightfully unexpected ways. Following that pure, refracted light back down to the frozen surface of the ocean, we find that the sea ice is rarely a perfectly flat, featureless mirror. The Arctic Ocean is a highly dynamic, ever-shifting puzzle of massive floating tectonic plates made of solid ice. Governed by the deep ocean currents and the relentless sweeping of the polar winds, these colossal sheets of multi-year ice frequently drift into one another. When millions of tons of ice gently, inevitably collide, they do not shatter immediately. Instead, they buckle, crunch, and force each other upward, creating towering chaotic structures known as pressure ridges. These winding ridges can stretch for miles across the frozen sea, looking like miniature mountain ranges constructed entirely of shattered glass. Because the ice has been highly compressed and pushed up into the light, it catches the sun and glows from within, radiating intense luminous shades of turquoise, aquamarine, and deep cobalt blue. They are sculptures of pure momentum, a beautiful frozen record of the incredible slow-motion power of the drifting sea. Navigating the mind around these glowing, jagged ridges reveals a comforting truth. Even the collisions and pressures of our own lives can, with time, be transformed into structures of profound, complex beauty, catching the light in ways a perfectly smooth surface never could. Beneath the heavy, chaotic beauty of those towering pressure ridges, the ocean holds a deeply hidden, invisible secret that protects the entire polar world. If you were to descend through the freezing waters of the Arctic Ocean, you would eventually pass through a remarkable distinct layer known as the halocline. The ocean here is heavily stratified, meaning it is divided into distinct horizontal layers that do not easily mix. Near the surface, the water is relatively fresh and incredibly cold, fed by melting ice and flowing northern rivers. Deep below, there is a massive layer of warmer, much saltier water that has travelled all the way from the Atlantic Ocean. The halocline is the invisible, sharply defined boundary that perfectly separates these two massive bodies of water. Because the cold, fresh water is less dense than the warm, salty water, it floats on top like a protective blanket. This invisible boundary is absolutely vital. If the halocline were to break down, the deep, warm Atlantic water would rise to the surface and melt the sea ice from below. The halocline acts as a liquid shield, a perfect boundary that maintains the delicate balance of the entire ecosystem. It is a profound, comforting metaphor. It is perfectly natural and deeply healthy to maintain our own invisible boundaries. You can allow the warm, complex currents of the world to exist while keeping your own internal surface cool, protected, and beautifully intact. Let your breath become that protective layer now, sealing off the noise of the day and preserving your own deep, quiet space. Sinking much deeper, passing entirely through that invisible protective boundary, we reach the inky, crushing depths of the abyssal plain. Here, in a world devoid of sunlight and defined by immense heavy pressure, moves a creature of almost unbelievable, delicate grace. This is Grimpoteuthis, affectionately known by marine biologists as the Dumbo octopus. Unlike the octopuses of the shallow coral reefs that crawl along the rocky seafloor, this deep-sea resident spends its life hovering weightlessly in the water column. It takes its name from the two large ear-like fins that protrude gently from the sides of its smooth, bell-shaped mantle. To move through the absolute darkness, it does not use forceful bursts of water. Instead, it slowly, rhythmically, flaps these delicate fins, gliding through the abyss with the slow-motion elegance of a bird flying through a heavy liquid sky. It is a creature entirely unbothered by the crushing weight of the ocean above it, living a life of pure buoyancy and quiet drifting. Following the gentle, rhythmic flapping of its fins in the mind's eye encourages a deep bodily release. You do not need to push or struggle against the heavy weight of exhaustion. You can simply let go, becoming entirely weightless, floating effortlessly through the dark, quiet, and comforting depths of your own resting mind. Rising back up toward the shallower sunlit bays of the coastal regions, the water is filled with the slow, massive shapes of the bowhead whales. These ancient giants of the ice possess incredibly thick, dark skin to insulate them from the freezing temperatures. But as the seasons slowly turn and the water warms just a fraction of a degree, these majestic creatures engage in a surprising, deeply communal ritual. They gather in the shallow, protected inlets where large, smooth, glacial boulders rest on the sandy seafloor. Here, they perform their annual molt. Moving with incredible care and slowness, the whales gently roll and rub their massive bodies against the submerged stones. It is an underwater spa, a peaceful, deliberate scratching that helps them shed the old, damaged layers of their winter skin, revealing the fresh, sleek surface beneath. The water fills with the gentle, rumbling sounds of their satisfaction and the soft, sweeping motion of their immense flippers. To envision these ancient, peaceful giants taking the time to slowly, rhythmically shed the weight of the past year is profoundly soothing. It is a physical manifestation of renewal. As you lie resting, imagine shedding the accumulated stress and the heavy, invisible layers of the day. You're gently rolling away the tension, leaving it behind, and revealing a fresh, completely calm and renewed state of being beneath. As the freshly molted whales swim back out into the deeper channels, they pass alongside the towering, deeply submerged walls of the drifting icebergs. In these specific, quiet moments, the whales are not the only ones making a sound. The iceberg itself is singing. When the powerful, deep ocean currents rush past the massive underwater crevasses and jagged edges of the iceberg, the moving water can cause the entire colossal structure to vibrate. This creates a phenomenon known as a harmonic tremor. The iceberg acts exactly like a massive submerged tuning fork, resonating with a deep, ultra-low frequency hum that vibrates endlessly through the water. This sound is often too low in pitch for the human ear to hear, but it can be felt physically, vibrating as a slow, rhythmic pulse around 0.5 Hz, exactly half a beat per second. It is the deep, resonant heartbeat of the ice, a continuous oceanic hum that grounds the entire polar marine environment. To imagine this deep, slow vibration is to connect with the very frequency of rest. It is a pulse so slow, so massive, and so incredibly steady that it absorbs all the frantic, scattered energy of the waking world. Let this low, steady, harmonic hum anchor your awareness. Feel it as a slow, rhythmic wave passing over you, a deep, oceanic lullaby that quiets the mind, softens the body, and carries you smoothly and seamlessly on the slow current toward the deepest, most restorative sleep. As that deep, low-frequency hum of the iceberg vibrates slowly through the dark, it washes over millions of tiny, glittering shapes suspended in the freezing water. Here, in an ocean that regularly drops below the normal freezing point of blood, the Arctic cod navigates the icy depths with absolute ease. This small silver fish does not survive by finding warmer currents or hiding in the mud. It thrives by fundamentally altering its own internal chemistry. The cod produces specialized glycoprotein molecules that circulate continuously through its bloodstream. These unique proteins act as a flawless, biological antifreeze. If a microscopic ice crystal attempts to form within the fish's body, these proteins instantly bind to its jagged edges, rounding them off and preventing the crystal from growing any larger. It is a microscopic act of pacification. The fish swims completely unbothered through a supercooled world, having neutralized the sharp, freezing elements from within. It is a brilliant, silent adaptation, revealing that true survival in a harsh environment does not always mean fighting the elements. Sometimes, it means gently altering our own internal composition to move harmoniously through the cold. You're adapting to the quiet of the night in this very same way, altering your internal rhythm to peacefully match the stillness around you. Far above these resilient silver fish, the polar sky is painted with its own hidden, sweeping structures. We often visualize the northern lights as bright, glowing ribbons of neon green and vibrant violet, painting the dark with cosmic radiation. But running directly alongside these brilliant colors are often distinct, pitch-black bands that curve and twist through the glowing auroral curtains. These are known as black auroras. They are not simply empty patches of sky or the absence of light. They are highly active regions of the atmosphere. In a black aurora, the electrical current is flowing in the exact opposite direction, rushing upward, away from the Earth, and sweeping the glowing electrons back out into the vastness of space. It is an incredible realization that these dark, empty rivers in the sky are actually performing an active upward release of energy. They teach us that emptiness is not merely a void, but a crucial, active part of a beautiful system. As you let go of your waking thoughts, the empty, dark spaces forming in your mind are just like these black auroras. They are actively releasing the built-up energy of the day, sending it up and away, leaving behind a perfectly balanced, peaceful sky. Where this upward-flowing atmospheric energy meets the vast edge of the boreal forest, the falling snow gathers in a manner completely unique to the silent north. In the indigenous languages of the Arctic, there is a specific, beautiful word for the snow that collects and rests upon the branches of trees: Kali. Unlike the snow that blankets the ground, Kali builds up silently over the course of many months, untouched by the wind. As the soft white layers grow thicker and heavier, they begin to gently weigh down the dark green branches of the spruce and fir trees. Slowly, patiently, the branches bend downward, forming deep, sweeping arches that point toward the earth. The entire forest takes on a bowed, heavily draped appearance. This accumulated Kali acts as a profound acoustic dampener, catching and absorbing any stray sounds, turning the woods into a muffled, perfectly soundproofed sanctuary. The trees do not snap under this immense freezing burden. They simply bend, yielding to the weight of the season with a slow, graceful surrender. You can allow your own body to yield in exactly the same way. Let your limbs grow heavy, feeling the gentle, comforting weight of the blankets pressing down on you. There is no need to hold yourself rigid. You can simply soften your posture, sinking deeper into the mattress, finding a profound rest in the act of yielding. Beyond the snow-draped silence of the sweeping forest, out on the wide, exposed plains of the Ungava Peninsula, the landscape cradles a geological marvel of absolute, breathtaking purity. This is the Pingualuit crater. Formed millions of years ago by the massive impact of a meteorite, the Earth here was scarred into a flawless, perfectly circular bowl. Over the millennia, this steep-sided crater filled with water, creating a lake entirely unique upon the Earth. Because the rim of the crater is elevated high above the surrounding tundra, it has no rivers flowing into it and no rivers flowing out. It is filled entirely, drop by the pristine polar rain and the melting of the winter snow. As a result, the water trapped within this perfect circle is considered to be some of the clearest, purest fresh water in the world. A silver disc lowered into its depths can still be seen perfectly clearly from over 100 feet above. It is a beautifully closed system, completely isolated from the turbulent, muddy currents of the surrounding landscape. To picture this vast circular mirror of pure water reflecting the sky is to envision the ultimate state of mental clarity. The mind, when completely isolated from the rushing input of the day, naturally settles into this same state of deep, undisturbed, and crystal clear perfection. Clinging tenaciously to the rocky, wind-scoured edges near these pure waters is a tiny, resilient splash of colour that embodies the quiet grace of the high tundra. This is the Campanula uniflora, the Arctic bellflower. In a landscape dominated by pale greys and blinding whites, this small plant pushes a single, vibrant, violet-blue flower out of the rocky crevices. But the bellflower does not stand tall and open to the sky. To protect its delicate reproductive centre and its precious nectar from the abrasive freezing winds, the heavy bell-shaped blossom naturally nods downward, facing the earth. It creates its own miniature parachute of stillness, a tiny, colourful dome that deflects the harsh weather while maintaining a pocket of calm, still air within its petals. It is a posture of quiet endurance. By simply bowing its head, the flower survives and thrives where larger, more stubborn plants would be easily torn away. It is a beautiful reminder that there is no need to always stand rigid and defiant against the challenges of the world. Sometimes, the most powerful and enduring act is to simply bow your head, turn your energy inward, and protect the quiet, colourful space within you until the storm has gracefully passed. Seeking out the tiny, scattered seeds among these nodding flowers before the deep winter freeze sets in is a small bird wrapped in a coat of pale, frost-coloured feathers. The hoary redpoll is a tiny finch that lives year-round in the freezing northern extremes. Because the polar night is so long and the temperatures drop so dramatically, this bird cannot possibly forage enough in the few hours of twilight to maintain its body heat through the long, dark hours. To solve this, it possesses a remarkable anatomical secret, a specialised esophageal pouch located right in its throat. As the brief day comes to a close, the redpoll rapidly gathers and swallows as many birch seeds as it can find, filling this hidden pouch to the brim. Then it finds a quiet, sheltered roost in the thickest part of the brush. Throughout the long, freezing night, the bird slowly digests this hidden reserve, releasing a steady, continuous stream of energy that keeps its internal furnace burning warmly until the dawn. It is a masterful biological strategy of slow release. You too have gathered all the experiences, thoughts, and energy you need from your waking hours. Now, tucked safely away in your own quiet roost, you can let those thoughts slowly digest and settle, radiating a quiet, steady peace that will comfortably sustain you entirely through the night. Leaving the roosting bird to its warm, slow slumber, we return to the dark, liquid labyrinth of the sea ice offshore, where a much larger creature navigates the pitch-black water using a completely different kind of slow, rhythmic energy. The narwhal, gliding through the freezing, lightless depths beneath the solid ice pack, cannot rely on its eyes to find the narrow, open leads of water it needs to breathe. Instead, it paints the darkness with a tapestry of sound. The narwhal can emit up to 1,000 rapid, highly focused clicks per second from its bulbous forehead. These sound waves travel through the dense water, bounce off the jagged, submerged walls of the ice, and echo back to the whale's sensitive lower jaw. Through this continuous clicking echolocation, the narwhal creates a high-resolution, three-dimensional acoustic map of the world above it. It sees the density, the shape, and the distance of the ice purely through the returning echoes. It is a breathtaking way to move through the unknown. The whale navigates the dark not by straining its eyes or rushing forward, but by sending out gentle, rhythmic signals and simply listening to how the world responds. You can navigate the transition into sleep in this very same way. Do not strain to force the sleep to come. Simply send out a quiet, slow breath and listen to the heavy, calming echo of relaxation as it returns softly to your body. At the very edge of the narwhal's expansive acoustic map, where the floating sea ice eventually meets the shallow incline of the shoreline, the boundary between the ocean and the earth engages in a slow, mesmerizing interaction. When the polar winds are gentle but persistent, they can slowly push the vast floating sheets of thin, newly formed ice directly against the beach. This creates a phenomenon known to indigenous hunters as an evu, or an ice shove. Because the movement is so incredibly slow, the ice does not violently crash or shatter. Instead, the thin, transparent sheets gently slide up onto the land, quietly snapping and stacking over one another in a slow-motion cascade. They build delicate, interlocking crystalline walls along the coast, glowing in the twilight like shattered panes of sea glass. The sound is a delicate, continuous whispering clatter, like 1,000 glass wind chimes softly brushing together in a slow breeze. It is the sound of gentle accumulation. The ocean is slowly, beautifully extending its frozen reach onto the land, stacking moment upon moment, layer upon layer, to build a quiet boundary of ice. It perfectly mirrors the soft stacking of your own resting moments, each slow breath building upon the last, constructing a beautiful protective wall of calm around your resting mind. When a thick, heavy snowfall rolls over these delicate stacked ice walls, the visual boundary between the earth and the sky completely, magically disappears. This is the profound sensory experience of a whiteout. With the low clouds perfectly matching the colour and luminosity of the snow-covered ground, the horizon simply vanishes. The landscape loses all of its shadows, all of its depth, and all of its defining edges. It feels as though you're no longer standing on a flat surface, but rather floating, suspended within an infinite featureless sphere of pure, softly glowing white light. While a whiteout can disorient a traveller, for the resting mind, it is the ultimate expression of sensory release. When there is absolutely no horizon to search for, no shadows to analyse, and no distant landmarks to reach, the eyes can finally stop trying to focus. The mind can completely let go of the deep, ingrained need to navigate or calculate distance. It is a blank canvas of pure peace. As you drift deeper into trance, allow your own internal landscape to become a gentle whiteout. Let all the sharp edges of your thoughts dissolve. Let the horizon of tomorrow vanish, and simply allow yourself to float weightlessly in this vast, comfortable, and brilliantly empty space. As the heavy snow of the whiteout eventually begins to thin, the atmosphere clears to reveal the most soothing, enduring light found anywhere on the planet. This is the polar blue hour. In temperate zones, the blue hour is a fleeting moment of twilight that lasts only a few minutes before the true night falls. But in the high Arctic, as the sun dips just barely below the horizon, the angle of the Earth causes the light to scatter through the ozone layer in a very specific, prolonged way. This bathes the entire world, the snow, the ice, the open water, and the sky, in a deep, profound, and incredibly tranquil sapphire hue. And because the sun is moving laterally along the horizon rather than sinking straight down, this mesmerizing blue light does not fade quickly. It can stretch on for hours, and in certain latitudes it lasts for weeks at a time. It is a prolonged, seemingly eternal state of twilight. To exist in the blue hour is to be held perfectly on the threshold. It is the space where the bright activity of the day has ended, but the deep, total darkness of the night has not yet fully arrived. It is the colour of pure transition, a cool visual lullaby that wraps the world in a calming embrace. Let this deep, eternal sapphire light fill the space behind your closed eyes. It is the perfect extended threshold between wakefulness and sleep, a quiet blue harbour where time slows to a beautiful halt, holding you gently as you drift further away. As the deep, eternal sapphire light of the blue hour finally gives way to the true velvet darkness of the polar midnight, we arrive at our final wonder. If you were to stand precisely at the geographic North Pole, at the very centre of the frozen ocean, and look straight up into the clear, freezing sky, you would witness a phenomenon unique to this single, solitary point on the globe. Directly overhead, pinned to the exact zenith of the heavens, rests Polaris, the North Star. While the rest of the world perceives the stars as rising in the east and setting in the west, here at the very top of the world, the stars do not rise or set at all. Because you are standing exactly on the Earth's axis of rotation, the entire canopy of the night sky simply spins in a massive, perfect horizontal circle around that one fixed point of light. Polaris never moves. It is the absolute anchor of the northern sky. For thousands of years, every migrating bird, every wandering fox, and every ancient explorer navigating the shifting, treacherous ice has relied on the unwavering stillness of that single star. It is the ultimate symbol of constancy in a world defined by extreme change. The ice below may fracture, the massive ocean currents may drift, and the seasons may swing wildly from endless light to endless dark. But that single point of light remains perfectly, permanently still. It is a profound realization that no matter how chaotic or constantly moving the world around us may be, there is always a center of gravity, a point of absolute, undisturbed stillness that we can look toward to find our bearings. It is the quiet center of the spinning wheel. As you rest beneath this imagined circling sky, you too can find that fixed point within yourself. The thoughts of the day, the worries of tomorrow, and the endless stream of information can just spin slowly around you, while your deepest self remains perfectly still, grounded, and completely at peace. We have travelled incredibly far together tonight, crossing thousands of miles of ancient ice, diving into the deepest, darkest, and quietest oceans, and soaring through the thin, shimmering air of the high stratosphere. You have witnessed the slow, beautiful breathing of the earth, the gentle resilience of microscopic life, and the vast, slow-turning wheels of the polar climate. But just as the brief, brilliant Arctic summer eventually yields to the heavy, comforting blanket of the winter snow, our journey has finally come to its quiet, natural end. You have gathered all these quiet wonders, but you do not need to hold on to any of them. There is no test waiting for you, no need to remember the names of the ice or the flight paths of the birds. Let the facts, the numbers, and the vivid images softly melt away, like delicate ice ferns dissolving at the very first touch of the morning light. What needs to stay with you will stay, absorbed deep into your resting mind as a profound sense of peace. The rest can simply drift away into the white, featureless distance of the falling snow. Your body has learned the deep, slow rhythm of the ancient glaciers. Feel the comforting, heavy weight of your own limbs sinking deeper and deeper into the mattress, pressing down with the slow, undeniable gravity of settling stone. The muscles in your shoulders are completely soft, yielding to the pull of the earth, no longer needing to hold you up. The muscles around your eyes have smoothed and relaxed, resting in the comfortable, heavy darkness of the polar night. Follow the simple, slow rhythm of your breath. It is as natural and effortless as the gentle, rhythmic lapping of the dark ocean against the edge of the sea ice. Breathing in, drawing in the cool, still air of the deep night. Breathing out, releasing the very last, lingering tensions of the waking day. There is absolutely nowhere else you need to be. There is nothing left that you need to do. The world will continue its slow, massive turning without you needing to watch over it. You are entirely safe, completely insulated, and deeply, perfectly warm in your own quiet sanctuary. The sky above is calm, the ice below is solid, the water is still. Let the silence of the north wrap around you, a thick, heavy, protective layer that keeps the noise of the world far, far away. Surrender to the vast, comforting emptiness. drift now, completely weightless, on the slow, dark current of the deep ocean. And now, 101 wonders are resting with you. Sleep now. Good night.